Okay, giving it a few minutes. Or a few seconds, sorry, not minutes. A few seconds for everyone to join, and then I'll let you take it away, Commissioner Lakatos.
Sure. Just let me know when to kick it off. Kick it off. Oh, sorry.
Cedric, if you want to go ahead and promote Maureen Madden to a panelist. Great, thank you. Okay, if you want to get started, Commissioner Lakatos for us.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I'm Santiago Lactos. I am the chair of our transportation committee. I'm going to lead the info session tonight. Tonight we have Matthew Hendrickson and Maureen Madden from the District Department of Transportation, better known as DDOT. They're going to walk us through the 14th Street Bus Priority Project, which runs through our ANC as well as ANC 2F. I won't steal any more of their thunder, but after they get through their presentation, we'll have time for some commissioner comments or questions, and then as well as some comments or such questions from the public. So Matthew, and Maureen, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I think I need permission to share the screen, and then I can start the presentation. I know that we're limited on time, so I'm going to try to go through the presentation very quickly so that we can spend most of the time answering your questions. And I hope that works for you guys. But all of the presentation materials will be posted on our website. And this is our very first meeting. And so we're basically asking questions at this time and really want to hear from you. And as we go forward, I want to preface this by saying there are two big opportunities coming up where we want you to participate and give us your feedback about this project and about all of the transportation issues and potential improvements that you see along the corridor. So I'm going to start and I'm going to end with this information. Commissioners, you should all have received an invitation to two safety walks coming up, one in the afternoon and one in the morning. The first one will be next Wednesday night, June 12th at 5 p.m. We're going to meet at the northern end of the section at Euclid and 14th Street Northwest, 5 p.m. And we're going to walk the entire corridor. And then the other one will be on the weekend, June 22nd, 9 a.m., same place. I'm going to get you all that information. Please share with your constituents. All are welcome. Have them RSVP. But I'm just going to lead with that because it's a really great opportunity to meet, to talk about the issues in person and really point them out. And so we can get a much more detailed look at what we're trying to look at the actual location. So with that, let's pull up the presentation. Hope you can all see this. All right, here we go. Excellent. So I think that was a good welcome. We're just going to continue this quick agenda, who we are and what we're trying to accomplish, and then we'll answer your questions. But this is who we are at DDOT, the Bus Priority Program. This is the focus of Maureen and I's work. We're trying to make transit better, really big picture. How we do that is to make it more reliable, make it more efficient. We all know the benefits of that and what that means. If you have better access, you have more access to more opportunities. This isn't just about the buses. This is about from when you leave your house to when you get to your final destination. So as a pedestrian, as you're waiting, all the things at the stops, and again, improving that transit service. And this is part of the mayor's initiative. This is one of 51 projects, also intersecting with another very important project on U Street that also connects to Florida Ave that we're very much involved with 1B. So some of you may be familiar with me and some of our previous work and some of our previous corridor walks. But this specific project is one of 51 for the city, as in the 51st city or 51st state in the country, DC, and it's 1.2 mile corridor from Thomas Circle to Euclid Street Northwest. Here's a little zoom in on that as far as where our project is. It also connects to existing bus priority projects further north and projects that are underway. So we know what those kind of bus lane configurations can look like. We also have future projects coming online to the south as far as part of our bus priority network. And we're also looking at, other considerations, including WMATA's Better Bus Network redesign, which is ongoing now, which is looking to kind of reshape the entire transit system, as well as DDOT's update of the bike network plan. There is bike infrastructure, as well as buses running along 14th Street Northwest. And a particular point of interest for us is those bus island designs where we have the bus stops integrated with bike infrastructure. 14th Street is a really important corridor for transit. This is a high ridership corridor. We serve over 17,000 riders per day. And, we serve, predominantly people of color and people with low incomes. And this includes all 3 bus routes of the 50s and the circulator. And of course, considerations for the future of the circulator and continuing to coordinate with WMATA through their Better Bus Network redesign. So we have a lot of buses, and they're pretty frequent when you kind of combine all of them, all of their running times, but we know that they're unreliable. They're pretty slow. This 7.2 miles per hour, I think we know how slow that is for all of us, but it's about 26% slower than just our average line throughout the system. We really want to target over 10 miles per hour minimum. So those are the kind of results we're trying to deliver for that type of efficiency. So just kind of where we're at performance, but we do know we're going to continue to be a high frequent corridor now and in the future. So these are all the things that we're kind of examining as we start this project. Again, we don't have all the answers here. We're doing a lot of analysis. We're doing a lot of fact finding. We want to hear from you. But we're looking at the operations, including those bus islands, and being able to accommodate articulated buses. I have it ARTICs here. That's just short for what some people call the bendy buses, but they're like kind of the double bus with the accordion middle. So that's what an articulated bus is. So we're looking at kind of tweaking that design because those bus islands really can't accommodate more than one bus. I mean, we probably should look at kind of the boarding area. And again, the operations overall, I think there's a lot of improvements that have been made since those have been built. Roadway safety, this is part of our Vision Zero high injury corridor. We will be taking a closer look with an official road safety audit that has specific guidelines from FHWA. I mean, we're partnering with our DDOT kind of internal team from our safety branch to do that. And so we already have a comment map, but we'll make sure we get you all that information. One, participation in the walks is going to be really critical and really helpful for us to identify those safety issues. So we're going to get you that information again. And then also, obviously, a busy commercial corridor. I think if you've just anytime you've been out there, you've seen trucks loading, you've seen drop-offs, you've seen double parking, you've seen how that conflicts not only with the traffic, but people walking, biking, that again create a lot of safety issues. And then again, that need to integrate and coordinate with our partners with the bike network. I'm going to wait to take all questions. I did see a hand pop up until the very end, and we'll get to all of them.
Yeah, Commissioner Chauvin, we're going to wait until the presentation ends, and then we can go into questions.
Just quick outline of the different sections. This is from Thomas Circle up to U Street. This is the predominant kind of layout of the corridor. You guys know it better than I do. Just a side note that AADT, that's kind of comparing to our kind of ridership, bus ridership that was over 17,000 daily riders. This is 15,500 vehicles within this section. So just making that consistent. So that's your annual average daily traffic volumes. And then the rest is, again, about 70 feet within this corridor with 2 travel lanes, parking, bike lanes in each direction. As we go further north, from north of Florida Avenue, again, it changes, it kind of morphs until we get further north. Again, you guys know this better than I do, but again, we're a little bit more constrained in this section. Same kind of layout, just a different configuration as we transition into those bus lanes that are further north. So that's the kind of right of way that we're going to be looking at potentially changing. And this is just what we kind of laid out earlier as far as all of those different things that we're going to be looking for and digging into and trying to identify and find improvements and opportunities for solutions. Again, kind of looking at where buses are getting stuck. What are those intersections? Why? Where are those pinch points? How can we make those improvements? Here's just a taste of kind of what it looks like now. And kind of our bus congestion. The black and dark red is where it's really slow. That dark red is 4.7 miles per hour. You really see that in the PM peak and where those pinch points are. Interestingly, the early AM peak, so like kind of before 7 o'clock, actually is worse than the AM peak. So I thought that was interesting. That is not pictured here, but it is part of our analysis. But just trying to give you, this is our typical analysis here. And then kind of our average weekend. And wow, you're seeing a lot more dark red, right? And so, and even again, the commercial corridor, we have a lot of unique challenges, I think very similarly to U Street. Safety is a continued issue here in our high injury network. We're doing a road safety audit, June 12th, June 22nd. Hope to see you there. But we've also had a lot of, I think, really kind of what jumps out at me is not just the number of crashes, but especially the ones including pedestrians, people walking and biking. And of course, our freight access, which is definitely needed. So how can we accommodate that? Are there commercial loading zones that we need to explore? The double parking, we're seeing this all the time. But we also have some existing constraints with already kind of some streetscape in the past where we have, some aids to pedestrians. Those curb bump outs are really helpful for people walking and the safety at those intersections. But again, we're just going to take a closer look at all of those opportunities, where those commercial needs. We generally do a freight survey here and talk to all the businesses to understand exactly how they're loading, what kind of trucks they're using, and what those needs are. And of course, buses and bikes working together. I love that. So again, continuing to coordinate with our friends, especially as we look at the bike network. And again, and knowing that, where we're seeing a lot of crashes with people on bikes, and looking really closely at this design of these bus islands, which offer a lot of benefits. But I think that there's already some immediate things that we're thinking through as far to make improvements. And speaking improvements, this is what we kind of have at our disposal as far as our toolbox of different types of treatments. I think you guys are most familiar with the red bus lanes. That's pretty obvious. We're painting the town red, literally. But there's different types of configurations. We also kind of just talked about those curb extensions or bus bulb outs. Bus stop rebalancing, making sure our stops are evenly placed. And again, measuring, or taking a closer look at the needs of the curb. And then some other things, again, pedestrian safety, signal timing, and transit signal priority, and then bus queue jumps where a bus can jump the light or kind of jump the line at a light. So it gets its own green light before the rest of traffic, so it can kind of jump ahead and keep people moving on buses. And our overall timeline. So this is the very beginning. This is the very first touch point of this project. And we're very open-ended. No decisions have been made. We're very open to kind of any concepts. We're gonna really go through a thorough process to vet every idea that kind of comes to us. So right now the world is your oyster. Certainly we have some constraints, but we definitely want to hear from you what you think we should do. Throughout this year, we're going to continue to work on those concepts, and then we'll bring back, we'll come back to you with all of the things that we've looked at and kind of what we've come up with potential concepts. Usually we try to whittle that to 1 or 2 or maybe 3, or particular intersection designs through 1 or 2 really strong concepts. And then once we do that, we'll finalize those concepts. And then again, make sure that we're on the right track, and continue to hear from you and get your feedback. So my goal is to have those concepts out by the end of the year, and then by next year we can continue the design and advance that design, where we'll then issue the NOI, and then 2026 for construction. So this is kind of our general work framework for the bus priority program. It's kind of a 1 year for concept, 1 year for design, and 1 year for construction. And that's all I got. Thank you, guys, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
How did I do on time? All right, we're doing all right.
Commissioner Chauvin, I know you had your hand raised first. I was going to raise my hand after that. So if you still want to ask your question or make your comment, go right ahead. And Matthew, if you could take we'll leave it up because someone might actually have a question.
Okay.
No, that was an irresponsible hand raise. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Okay. I just had a very quick question. Thank you for being here for giving this presentation. The ANC actually passed a resolution, which I know you're aware of, about that concept requests last couple months ago, it must have been. But I didn't, or is the articulated buses, so the long ones, is that something like a maybe, or is this something that you've heard through the grapevine that's for sure coming? Because I've heard of the one thing I know about taking the bus on 14th Street is always crowded. So it's really packed all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's the conversations that we've had with WMATA is that they're coming. But again, I'm not going to speak for WMATA, but we want to make sure that it's compatible with them if they run them or not.
Awesome. That's good to hear. And thank you for focusing on those bus islands. Commissioner Trindade.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, which is very clear and also very exciting. I think we've deserved this for a while. I wanted to convey and ask for your immediate sort of reaction to a complaint I have, because my district goes from Belmont to Clifton on 14th Street, which is the sort of in-between zone where the bike lanes sort of fade away. Like literally the paint is faded between the nice protected lanes in Columbia Heights and the nice protected lanes south of us. And it's also, coincidentally, the hill right there, it is a bit of a steep grade, and so speeds are higher, and some of the corners are blind for drivers. So I've heard safety complaints from bikers. I've heard safety complaints for people with cars, that the speed is just too fast on the hill and all the paint is worn away. So, on that hyper-specific segment, I don't know if you have already been, sort of projecting forward, whether you think, can we imagine that the protected bike lanes will be connected to the other and the bus infrastructure will be standardized up and down? Or, are there special considerations because it's a hill, because of the width, something like that?
Yeah, so I don't have any, answers as far as like what it's going to look like, because right now it's very open-ended. But those are the types of questions that we're going to ask and evaluate, especially, with bus and bike infrastructure coming together. And that is a point of emphasis for us. With the grade, there is some design issues that we kind of take into consideration with that. And like you said, the speed, we definitely saw that when out in the field, and those types of conflicts. And I think that kind of matches with some crash data. So yeah, we're going to take a closer look at that. Again, I don't have any preconceived notions, just because I just want, again, to be open-minded about potential solutions. But those are the things that we will evaluate.
Chair Harris, what next?
Yeah, can you go ahead and pull back up the slide where it says the potential, I think, solutions, where you talk about the paint, yep, great. Are there any that you know of that could be prioritized here on 14th, or all of these will be considered?
I'm going to be a broken record here, Commissioner Harris. So these are all the tools that we have at our disposal.
Okay.
And we're going to go out into the field with you, and we're going to be looking at what those issues are, and then we can address what the best solutions for them will be. And again, just being open-minded, we have a lot of things that we can use to address these issues. These are kind of like the main ones. But again, I'm not going to say what the answers are at this point. At our next when we kind of roll out those concepts, at the next kind of phase of this project, kind of later in the fall, then we'll have something more concrete, pardon the pun. But I would love to hear from you, you know, especially where there are issues, where there are challenges, and then we can kind of match those solutions to those issues.
Great. And then, sorry, one more question. When below it says pedestrian safety measures, are the only options are the flex post, or is that just like the picture that y'all had?
I think it's just kind of demonstrates, right, that you can go from tactical to more permanent. We already have quite a few curb extensions within the area. And so we are going to kind of follow back behind that. But again, yeah, it can be that is just an example.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Fields?
Yeah, and I wanted to say thank you so much for being here, Matthew. I really appreciate it. I live right off 14th Street and I ride the bus often. So, you know, I know sort of some of the good sides and the bad sides of it. My question was more so kind of just the way that the bus lanes are positioned on 14th and U Street, because there's a bike lane in between where the bus comes. And so oftentimes like motorcyclists use that, and it can kind of be like kind of scary and dangerous for pedestrians. And also, like, I'm sure buses are, you know, finding it hard to stop because they'll zoom through by them if they're not using the bike lane. And I just wanted to bring that up as something to kind of like monitor as we're, you know, going through how to best put things in place for this, because it can be scary. So yeah, just wanted to raise awareness about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Fields. And also just so nice to hear and see from all of you that have already participated in some of these field walks with us on U Street. So thank you for your continued with the rest of you and many of you that I haven't worked with before. So thank you for that input. That's a great insight. And keep it all coming. This is really valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fields. Thank you, Matthew. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you. I want to emphasize how important it is that we have safe ways for everybody to move around our city via every mode. One thing that really struck me, fortunately not literally, on this issue in the last, maybe earlier in May, someone on social media documented a particularly troubling road rage incident along 14th Street where a bike rider dodged around a car that was illegally stopped in the unprotected bike lane somewhere north of U Street, south of Florida Avenue. The bike rider was within her rights to do so. And somehow further up the hill at actually just about 14th and Euclid, another driver who had been apparently enraged by her legal and safe behavior pulled over into the unprotected bike lane, stopping that biker from proceeding further, and got out of the car and was yelling at her until other people intervened. This is documented by another biker's like head camera. So why am I talking about this? We're not going to eliminate people being enraged. We're not going to eliminate people driving who are not emotionally capable of driving. But what we can do is reduce the chances for that sort of thing to happen. And so I really hope that when the redesign happens, that fully protected and fully separated bike lanes are considered, maybe raised to a similar elevation as the sidewalk, maybe not. Sort of like how along the wharf they have that, I think. But it really is, it's not good for the bikers, it's not good for the pedestrians, and it's not good for the drivers who are not emotionally ready to drive, but are doing so anyway. Yeah, and the 14th Street bike lanes are so frequently blocked that I do not recommend to my neighbors to use them. I recommend they go over to 11th instead or go down on 15th. And as far as I know, that's generally the case. Finally, just one last thing. I mean, you gave the numbers, and that's really clear that bus use is extremely heavy on this street, and that's fantastic. I saw a stat from WMATA earlier this month saying that their bus ridership has now matched the pre-pandemic bus ridership, or maybe exceeded it, which is fantastic. Where was I going with that? Oh, yes. And most of our neighbors do not commute to work via a single occupancy vehicle. Some pre-pandemic stats, even before the full rise in telework, showed that by far more people use public transit, biking, carpooling, walking than use single vehicle transit. So I can confidently speak for the overwhelming majority of all of our neighbors when we say prioritizing public transit and other non-car methods of getting around is important for all of us to get to work and to get to work safely. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Genzik, if you don't mind, there's someone on the chat who's had their hand up for a little bit while, Nick Looney. Cedric, could you allow them to speak? Nick, you can speak if you can hear us.
Hi, yeah, I'd just like to say that I was that biker who recorded that video. And I just wanted to say that the reason, like the last commissioner was stating, the reason I started carrying a camera is because these incidents are so frequent, especially in this corridor, that I really felt like it was, my only defense when I'm commuting to work. I commute to work, 5 days a week. I have an in-person only job, and I use the 14th Street bike lanes to in my commute. And then I've started documenting my interactions with cars on the 14th Street lane because it's so awful. Like I said in the chat, there was over the past month or so, I've sent in about 16 311 reports of cars parked in bike lanes, blocking bike lanes, different violations with the bike lanes. And that's just one person using the bike lanes for their commute. So I can't imagine how prevalent that is if you expand that out to beyond the 10 minutes that I'm on the street. So I just want to echo the last commissioner's plea for protected bike lanes. I mean, we have them downtown. We know that they work and how to do them. I think it's the gap in the city currently is how do people get to those protected bike lanes downtown? We need to expand the network so that people can feel safe throughout their whole commute and not just once they get downtown. So thank you, and I hope you consider protected bike lanes.
Thank you, Mr. Looney.
Thank you, Nick. Commissioner Genzik, go right ahead, and then after that, I think we'll probably wrap up at the info session.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for your presentation. It was good. I appreciate it. The one start would possibly be getting DDOT and the transportation line to get these lights, the street lights that stop traffic and go get on time like they do in New York City, so it's a full movable thing. That'll probably speed up the bus lanes just a little bit instead of having a green stop, red stop, green stop. So it is about timing. That's also, and then more of a comment that just like there's on emotionally drivers, there's also a lot of bikers that are also like that as well. If everyone in an ideal world could follow the law and actually not stop at lights, not go reverse on back ways and roads, it would be great. But we don't live in that world, so it's just unfortunate, and we'll just have to continue working together in harmony. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much, Matthew and Maureen. I think I mentioned if you got all the questions in the Q&A. Their contact information should be in the chat for everybody. And with that, Chair Harris, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us again, Matthew and Maureen. And we will absolutely share the information again about the different walks next week and the week after. And hopefully community members and other commissioners, you can join us. So hopefully we'll see you there.
We would love that. Thank you so much.
Great. So thank you everyone for joining us this evening. If you're just now tuning in, that was our info session with DDOT. We will post more information or repost information in the chat if you need it. But with that, I call June's meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Handerhan,
Present.
Commissioner Chauvin,
Present.
Commissioner Sycamore,
Present.
Commissioner Lakatos,
Present.
Commissioner Kensick.
Present.
I am present. Commissioner Fields,
Present.
Chair Harris,
Present.
you are present, and Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Well, with 9 of 9 commissioners present, we have a full house and a quorum.
Great. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you. Do we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. We also have a consent agenda to approve May's meeting minutes. We also have taken the feedback from commissioners, I believe from the last few meetings on speaking time. So this encompasses 2 comments of 2 minutes each for commissioners and community members, with an additional 20-second comment at the discretion of the chair per topic. Do we have a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
I move that we approve tonight's consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Financial reports, Commissioner Lakatos.
We do not have a financial report to vote on this month. We will have it next month.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, committee reports.
I'm sorry, quick question on financial report. Do we have any updates on the big problem with financing payments to requesting organizations and our own payments? Do we have an update? Do we have confirmation from OANC regarding work that they are destined to do to make our lives easier?
Are you referring to grants and sponsorships, not payments?
Well, I mean, we've had, I believe it's just grants and sponsorships that we're having problems with. Am I correct?
No, Commissioner Chauvin, I don't have an update, but I'm happy to talk about that more in detail offline. There's some changes in this year's budget that will change what the rules are, but those rules, I'm not positive how much they would affect sponsorships, and they would go into effect in October when the fiscal year starts. But I think we can get into that if you'd like separately.
We'll also know the best path moving forward for everyone here, and it's just a better procedure for us is that if any sponsorship comes up or grants, that we should, before voting on it as an ANC, we should email the OANC first. Then they can provide us clarity up front rather than us going back and forth on a call and then trying to get that clarity retroactively. So if there's any sponsorships or grants or questions that come up, I would advise all commissioners, even if you have a community member who comes up to you, you can CC Commissioner Lakatos, you can CC myself, and then email the OANC. So it would be emailing Kent, the executive director, and likely Dawn, and maybe even Denise, one of the attorneys there. Commissioner Kensick.
I echo what Commissioner Chauvin has said. I think a couple of times, Treasurer Lakatos, we've said we'll talk about this offline, but I haven't heard much talking. So let's actually set like a time for some of us commissioners to get together and actually like discuss it and get into the process instead of just keep punting it down. We're now in month 6. So let's really get something together. Let's get a meeting together. Do you want me to organize that meeting?
Commissioner Kensick, that sounds like a great idea. I'm happy to, I'm sorry I haven't followed up on that. I will also say there are limitations to what I can do because I do not control district law, which controls what we can spend our money on. I know you're not saying that I do, but I just want to make sure that is to restated that I'm bound, well, we are bound by what the rules say. But I think that's a great idea and we should definitely get on that.
Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Commissioner Kensick, for volunteering to get that together. Just 2 quick recommendations about folks you might want to invite. In addition to folks from the office of ANC, who you should definitely invite, my understanding is that the changes that Commissioner Lakatos alluded to that are being proposed in the budget are being proposed by Councilmember Robert White or members of his staff. So it might be useful to write also to Councilmember Robert White's staff and get them to explain what their intent is with the changes and to how ANC grants work.
It's a very prudent recommendation.
So
Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
I would also recommend, and maybe that's something Commissioner Kinsick we can put on the website so community members can also join. I just want to reiterate, I know I keep saying this, but as Commissioner Lakatos stated, this is not 1B's guidance. This is not us preventing spending money. Oftentimes when we're emailing OANC, which is probably one of the delays too, is that we're talking about our prior financial reports and trying to get those things cleared. So we just got an email this week about further documentation and paperwork that they need for a simple Zoom charge. And I believe we've provided that. So it's just been a lot of red tape for us to get very simple things. So it's really not on us and under our discretion. It really is DC law and what the OANC has guided us. But I think a meeting and maybe even having OANC there would be really helpful. Okay, moving on to committee reports. Economic Development, Commissioner Jones.
All right, so at the May meeting of the Economic Development Committee, we talked about 2 large topics I want to draw attention to from the full ANC's attention to. Neither one was voted on, so we do not have anything to vote on tonight. We're going to continue discussion, but I want to make sure everyone is ready to engage in that discussion. So the first item was about a community placemaking entity for the U Street area. So what is a community placemaking entity? Essentially, it is something that could do what in other parts of town a business improvement district does. What is the difference? A business improvement district is, and people who know more than this should correct me, but is effectively financed by businesses in a certain area voluntarily taxing themselves and then using those proceeds to make improvements to the immediate area around them. And the idea is the improvements will more than make up, that will drive up business to the point that it more than makes up for the taxes. So there are a couple challenges with that in the U Street area. One is that there's a lot of what someone has described as institutional presence along the area. For example, the DC Housing Finance Agency is not a business. The Reeves Center is not a business. Howard University is not a business. None of those entities are able to tax themselves in the way that a business improvement district would need to do to raise themselves some revenue. The other challenge is that many of the businesses in the U Street area are small. That is, they are single establishments, and it is frequently worth it, but it is a challenge to bring together a large quantity of small businesses than just a few large businesses. So there have been some logistic challenges with that. I understand that in the past there have been efforts to make a bid and or a business improvement district. I'm not going to go through those today, but that's why. So that's some background. So a community placemaking entity. We don't have a name for this, but we're talking about sort of two different things. One is where will the revenue come from? The primary source of revenue for such a placemaking entity is currently intended to be performance parking in the U Street and then in greater U Street area. If you have thoughts on that, please direct those to Commissioner Lakatos, who is handling that issue in the Transportation Committee. So the Economic Development Committee is handling, okay, assuming that there's funding coming in, how do we want to manage those funds? There are a couple of thoughts about what sorts of interests need to be represented on the management of any such community placemaking entity. Businesses are definitely on the list, but so are non-businesses. That might include neighbors. That might include appointees from the ANC or designees from the ANC. That might include someone from the Howard University community, either the university itself or students or some similar person. So right now, that's the main thing that we are brainstorming. We had a couple of thoughts that we wanted to make sure to consider when we're considering bringing representatives to the management of such a placemaking entity from all of our neighborhoods, all of our neighbors. For example, Commissioner Chauvin recommended that at least one member be someone who owns the home they live in, and that at least one be a renter, because the two experiences of living in our neighborhoods can be somewhat different sometimes. And then another thought that well, I'll stop boring you now, but that's the right. We're going to engage in further discussion. We have not drafted any resolutions or any recommendations about what sorts of representation we want to see on the management of a community placemaking entity, or other thoughts about what precisely its mandate should be. But discussion has started, and it will be ongoing for at least the next meeting and possibly beyond. Commissioner Trindade-Duramo.
Thank you. Just if you can briefly give us a sense of, is there a group of people outside the ANC? Are there other stakeholders that are involved? What's the scope of the discussions happening, or is this something that your committee is just initiating and you'll hope to reach out to people? I'm trying to get a sense of, like, is this going to be an LLC that, or is it going to be some kind of nonprofit arrangement?
Yeah, my anticipation is that it's going to be some sort of nonprofit, like a business improvement district is, with some sort of commission from the city to operate in some like quasi-governmental way. I'm not an expert on the legal forms of placemaking entities. If you are interested in that, we will have people who are experts on this at the Economic Development Committee. So that's part two of your question. Let me go back to part one of the question, is who all should be involved with this? I mean, the Economic Development Committee welcomes all input on this. Like I said, we're in the early stages of this. We're looking for, we want to make sure that we're inclusive of the broad views that our many neighbors have. And we do not, we're not going to have the correct answers by ourselves, and we really encourage community input on this. Commissioner Sycamore.
Thank you so much. And I apologize in advance. I don't have any power at my house, so I might possibly be blacked out sometime in this meeting, just as a general thing. But just a quick question on this. First of all, what is performance parking? I guess I'm not familiar with that term. Number one. Number two, and I know you said you weren't quite clear on the mandate of what this organization would do, but to the best of my knowledge, bids are, mostly about keeping cleanliness and like rat mitigation and and things of that nature. Is this entity looking to go beyond that scope of what a bid is, or narrow that scope? Just to get just a rough idea of what you're thinking.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer your second question, and then I'm going to ask Commissioner Lakatos to talk about performance parking, because he is more knowledgeable about that than I am. For the second question, definitely rat and trash issues are like probably top of the list. We've all walked down U Street and seen sanitation issues. The city has not allocated the resources needed to keep U Street at an acceptable level of sanitation, and frankly is unlikely to do so. So that's definitely a top priority. But bids also do other things. The downtown bid does various events. For example, I don't know what else beyond. I mean, also like some things that are sort of little details, but sort of nice to have. I see people wearing the downtown bid worker shirts, replacing the flowers in the flower beds at the bus stop that I get off at when I go to work, for example, downtown. So I think that the mandate would be probably we would want them to prioritize sanitation, but there would be a number of other things that they could do as well. But they're also open to community input. And then would Commissioner Lakatos want to speak briefly about performance parking?
Yeah, definitely. Commissioner Jones. So Commissioner Sycamore, performance parking, there's a performance parking zone that was established in the law in last year's budget that basically what is it encompasses an area, goes up to around Florida Avenue, goes down around to, I think it's like S Street. There's a diagram, I'll send you a map, but it's for metered parking. So it charges metered parking based on demand. So you imagine later in the evening, a lot more people want to come to the area. It charges that metered parking based on demand. There's a similar zone downtown near Capital One Arena. There's another zone in near Nats Park. So it's sort of charging it like based on demand rather than just acting like, parking in the area is worth what a standard rate is, any sort of day.
And a quick follow-up on that. I'm so sorry with the behind me. But would that impact residents at all, or is that just for not for zone one? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, people with residential parking permits would be entirely exempted from this. If anything, what's likely to happen is that resident parking access would increase because fewer people from other parts would drive, and they'd be more likely to come to U Street, which is a big draw, more likely to come to U Street and either park off street or come via metro or come via ride share or bike or walk or any of the other ways to get around town. Commissioner Chauvin?
Yes, Commissioner Santiago Commissioner Lakatos can correct me if I'm, but I believe that the funding has been severed in this proposed budget. The funding from the parking performance zone, and the mayor, even though the bill to fund it via the performance parking was approved in last year's budget, and the mayor swept the monies because it hadn't been spent or made from last year's budget into the general fund. So Commissioner Lakatos can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think with the dire situation we're in, and this not being a at-risk people program, that we have a lot of presumption we'll get that funding. So I think we really need to separate the funding component in the discussion. My second point is that I made some points in our Economic Development Committee meeting that the bid should not be taken off the table. And I articulated how 10 years ago, there was $150,000 allocated via a PUD, the 13th and U JBG building in the southwest corner at 13th and U. The benefits package put forward $150,000 to study the creation of a bid on U Street. All those funds were expended, and from my surmise, as I've spoken to at least several folks who are involved in that effort, is that all of the small businesses wanted it, and all the small businesses were on board for a bid. All right. And the problem had to do with REITs, REITs, outside owned apartment buildings that have no interest in the community, only their bottom line. There was a conjoining merger of, I think, JBG and Smith Company. And so the point.
I don't think we're disputing any of this. I appreciate the context, but do you think you can bring it up when it's talked about further economic development?
Yeah, I just want to be certain it's not off the table in conversation. So, because I don't think that the history calls for taking it off the table. So just wanted to be clear that of that intention. Thank you.
Yeah. Madam Chair, if I may, just two quick responses to that. The first is on the revenue sourcing. My understanding as of a couple of weeks ago is that Commissioner Nadeau's office is trying to put the revenue. It has like proposed amendments to the budget that put it back in. I admit I've not looked at the budget drafts in the last 2 weeks, but they are trying to prevent the mayor from sweeping up those funds. And in fact, the law is written in a way that, unless amended to allow the mayor to do so, the mayor is not allowed to raid those funds for other purposes. Now I'm like, Councilmember Nadeau could lose that political fight. That could happen, but that's my awareness to the most recent thing. As for the history of bids and the future of bids, Commissioner Chauvin, I reached out to you in an email asking if you were interested in pursuing looking into the past obstacles to bids. And if that's something you want to do, I'd encourage you to do so. I do not personally have the bandwidth to look into that, but I know that this is an issue that you're passionate about, and I'd be happy to support you in any way following your leadership looking into the past on that. Commissioner Henderhan?
I don't have a ton to add that's been said since I raised my hand. And I know we have a lot to cover, but just really supportive of a bid, or to clarify, like a bid-like entity. I thought Nicole is here from the council member's office. And I just wouldn't want us to, be on a separate track. I think they refer to it as a SID, but has some very similar functions just because of the structure. So I just wanted to say that, and also thank Nicole, who I think has been driving this process through Sam Nadeau's office for a while, because I think it's really needed, and the businesses are supportive, even with all the complicated history. Thank you.
With the consent of the commission, it sounds like we're done with this item, so I'd like to move on to the next economic development item.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. The other thing that we talked about at Economic Development Committee meeting, in May, was a council bill proposed by Councilmember Nadeau. This is Bill 25-0802. And this bill would lock in certain requirements about 1617 U Street and 1620 V Street. I'm gonna try to share my screen really fast, so give me one moment. So one thing that the Economic Development Committee saw in this bill is that it really draws a lot from the hard work that Economic Development Committee members and former chair of the Economic Development Committee, Larry Handerhan, had put into gathering input on uses of the site, the district-owned property at 1617 U Street and 1620 V Street. A couple of things that I'll just skim through it really fast. The bill would prevent the mayor from reducing or waiving affordable housing requirements at the site. It would require at least 2 additional public hearings led by the mayor following the conclusion of the open zoning case. Require that the property be retained by the district in perpetuity. require that the police and fire stations remain at the site and maintain or enhance their current service levels, and require a number of other things that I can talk about. But let's see, an assessment of feasibility of provision of affordable housing above and beyond the requirements of publicly owned sites. When we had this discussion, it seemed like the ANC 1B Economic Development Committee was generally in favor of each provision that was in this bill. What I see as the main risk in this bill is that there are other things that the ANC might want to ask be locked into the RFP or the pre-RFP that might not have been noticed yet, and that we might want to ask Councilmember Nadeau and her staff to amend the bills to include those things. A couple of notes: this does not say anything about the zoning. The way that the district does zoning is not through the legislative branch, but through the quasi-judicial zoning commission. So it would not be, it would be a separation of powers issue to try to use this bill to constrain the physical aspects of the site. So we're hoping that discussion will continue on what uses we want to see guaranteed at the site. The Economic Development Committee is aiming to hold a further public meeting, most likely toward the end of June or early in July, and likely on a weekend day to ease access for the general public, for further community brainstorming on uses of 1617 U Street and 1620 B Street. When once we settle the meeting time and date, as always, that meeting is open to the public. It'll be posted to the ANC 1B website. It will be sent out via the listserv. We'll advertise it via the Twitter account, and we would encourage community members to additionally spread the word on that. I don't currently have a date on that. I have not yet had a chance to follow up with key folks about their availability. But once a date is determined, I'll make sure that everyone is fully notified. We did not take any votes at the ANC 1B Economic Development Committee. There were no motions, no votes on this item. Commissioner Chauvin. I'm going to stop sharing the screen, sorry.
Yes, two things on this. Was wondering, I recall, and perhaps I am a little ambiguous, but I thought we had called for a public review of the bill with the help of, with the assistance and or attendance of our council member, Ward 1. And secondly, I had reached out to the council member's office, was wondering what the review period is for this bill. Does anybody have an update? Has it been accepted for review by the council? Will there be a hearing? Do we not know anything? Have you heard anything?
On the first item, Commissioner Chauvin, that's the public meeting that I was talking about. The public meeting would be centered around what do we think about the bill as proposed? What do we like about it? And what do we want to see changed about it? For the second question, I am not up to date on where this bill is in the legislative process. If Nicole is around and wants to speak to that, please do so.
I'm here. I'm ready to be called on at any time. So in terms of public engagement or opportunities to comment, if this bill were to move forward, it would have to have a public hearing in which anyone in the community would be able to provide testimony. The bill is not currently scheduled for a hearing. And so we will see it's with Councilmember McDuffie's committee. So if he brings it up for a hearing, there will be ample opportunity for the community to weigh in at that point. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Sycamore?
Thank you. I mean, I'm generally skeptical of this until I read the whole thing, but the really quick review, and possibly for Nicole to take note of, it does say it grants ANC 1C great weight. Is there a reason for 1C and not 1B?
We already have great weight. I think it's just adding 1C because of their close proximity, which is kind of our informal approach anyways, but it makes it formal.
Yeah, so
Okay.
to my awareness, ANC 1C, like prior to redistricting, would have had great weight on this site. Some of the neighbors in that area are disappointed that they no longer have great weight in that site, and they're missing it by like a couple 100 feet or something like that.
Got it.
So they want great weight in addition to us and ANC 2B.
Okay, would it be worth adding 1B just to make sure that it's set in stone?
I believe that if you look in the text, it's notes
Yeah,
that
that's just the one thing that caught me.
One moment. If you look on page 3, there's a clause beginning the line 67. It says ANC 1C shall be granted great weight in any matter for which Advisory Neighborhood Commission 1B or 2B would ordinarily be granted great weight. So they
Okay, thank you. I missed that.
weight on
Thank you.
anything that we wouldn't have great weight on.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your answering my question.
Yep. Commissioner Kensick.
Yeah, this is directed towards Nicole. I'd like to know what has been the Councilmember Nadeau's sudden change of heart, where she's been the last 14 months, as we talked about this, why all of a sudden? And when I was reading through it, it said the service levels would stay the same. That again is a little concerning, service levels, because service levels could stay the same anywhere you go. It's again not really giving any guarantees about what we've been asking for, police, fire to return. So I just want to make sure she's be a little more specific, and I guess we could talk about that future, about her service levels of what she's talking about. And again, why all of a sudden change of heart? I just find it's almost like a Monday quarterback at this point, 14 months in the game. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't categorize it as a change of heart. I think this is a lot we've always felt very strongly about the public input process. We're just codifying some of it into legislation. You're welcome to disagree with that assessment if you like. The service level part, I'm happy to give you some more detailed information from our legislative director. But I really think we're just trying to reassure the community. I think we've heard a lot of concerns that service levels would change if the site is not right there, if the police and fire are not, right down the block. And so, making sure that we're really focusing on that folks don't experience a change in the service that they're receiving from those public entities during, any redevelopment process. But happy to follow up with any additional information from my team that worked on this bill.
Commissioner Trindade-Duramo.
Thank you. Also, just a note for Nicole, and sorry, I'm jumping back to this point about ANC 1C, but I don't really believe the plain reading of that language suggests what you say it does, because this seems to imply that 1C is substituting 1B and 2B, which would ordinarily be granted great weight. So I don't know if maybe the clarification on that language would be in order. It really seems like the nature, it's a substitute, giving 1C great weight, whereas normally 1B and 2B would have been given it.
Yeah, thank you. That was kind of my thing as well. That's exactly what I was thinking. So thank you for that clarification. You said it far more eloquently than I did.
Yeah, that's certainly not the intent. So we can double check that language does not inadvertently cause that. Sure.
So Commissioner Kensick, since you've spoken once, I'm going to go to audience questions first and then return to you. Is that all right?
Of course.
Neighbor Arlene Fesconich, and would Cedric, would you mind giving her privilege to speak?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I have a couple of questions on this, and I think the timeline.
Ms. Visconich, please give us a moment. Commissioner Trindade-Duramo, can you please start the timer?
Got it.
I'm concerned about the timeline for discussing this. You said in June or July, and I mean, what is the actual timeline estimated for this bill even being taken out of committee and going through the voting process. And also I had another concern about the service levels. The bill only talks about service levels, but it does not make any commitment about keeping the fire and police station on site. Is that the intent of this this proposed legislation, or is it intended that the police and fire are moving? Those two questions. I think the timeline is important too, because I want to make sure that we have a chance to hear what the other zoning options are that Office of Planning proposed, and the other zoning options that are not inconsistent with the comp plan. We want to hear what they are before we go about discussing this proposed piece of legislation.
So I'm gonna have Nicole answer about the keeping the police and fire stations there. But as far as the process question goes, I don't think there's any harm. And in fact, the ANC's approach has so far been to work in parallel on two different questions. One is, what should the zoning of the site be? And the other is, regardless of the zoning, what are the priorities we want to see at the site? Ms. Vescanich, as you just mentioned in your own comment, it is a high priority that regardless of the zoning, whether it's kept at MU4, whether it's changed partially or wholly to another zone, that everybody in the community wants the police and fire station to stay there. So that's something we can ask for regardless of the zoning. So we've been taking, the ANC has so far been taking a two-track approach, one about the zoning questions, one about the use questions. They're somewhat related. A zoning that allows for more density allows for more uses. But regardless of the zoning, we want to make sure that we understand neighbors' priority for that site, no matter the zoning of the site.
Well, is the ANC going to address and discuss with the community the other zoning options before they start talking about this bill, to make sure that the community knows what those other zoning options are?
I'm going to chime in here. So we actually, in the next bullet point in our agenda, we are talking about the revised report from Office of Planning and discussing what the zoning commission talked about in their meeting last Thursday. But both of these processes can happen at the same time. It does not mean one needs to wait for the other. We are simply, what Commissioner Jones is discussing for economic development are the potential uses for the site. And by everything that ANC knows, and from what DIMPED has told us, it is going to be a requirement in the RFP for the fire station and the police station to stay. So unless we are told otherwise, we will let the community know. But I totally get everyone's concerns, but we have been told that the fire station and the police station are staying there.
Yeah.
So if you give us a moment and we get through kind of the rest of the questions and comments, we will be talking about the processes around the map amendment for 1617. This is just talking about the potential uses and to start the discussion as to what the community would like to see in relation to what Councilmember Nadeau is proposing in the bill that she has. So
is that something that really should be put into the legislation, to say that excuse me, to say that the police and fire are coming back, if in fact that's the intent?
I did not write the legislation. We have Councilmember Nadeau's chief of staff right here.
Yeah, she didn't. Yeah, I don't think she addressed that part yet about the.
I did not give her a chance to address that part yet. I apologize. Would Nicole please answer that part of the question, which is the intent of the legislation and to keep the fire and police station at that site, and does the wording match that intent?
So the intent from pretty much everybody, MPD, FEMS, the community, is for it to stay. We generally don't require in legislation specific locations for any kind of thing like this. That's not generally how we go about things. So that is not included in this legislation, but there is no indication from anyone making these decisions that the police and fire station will not return.
So there's no guarantee on that. Is that correct?
If the mayor chooses to move things, there is very little the council can do to micromanage how, like, we have an executive branch. The executive branch is entrusted to manage the details. The council is limited in what it can do to micromanage the executive. This has a lot of downsides. Frequently, the executive does things that I don't like, but it is how our system works.
So you're saying that the mayor and office of planning are the ones
Ms.
that
Piskanich,
will
I'm
make
going to
that.
go to the next question if that's all right. I want to be equitable to everybody
Okay.
who had their
And
hand
then
raised.
just as a correction, it's not Office of Planning, it's DEMPED. So it's Deputy Mayor of Economic Development and Planning.
They'll make that decision.
Yes.
And you got indication that it would come back or stay, I should say.
We have been told otherwise.
Okay.
And ANC 1B has already passed a resolution asking for it to stay as well. So let me just reiterate that. Commissioner Sycamore, I'm going to continue with the community questions since you've already spoken and then go back to you. Mr. Jones. Mr. Randy Jones, you were still on mute. There you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if it's something that, this is business as usual, use your great weight to say we'd like this police station and fire station to be there, and we're not going to support your legislation unless it's actually in the legislation. Unless those words are revised to call for something other than service level maintenance. I don't get it. Drive a harder bargain. Ask more of your political, representatives, your council members. Sorry, that's it.
Great. So, Mr. Jones, thank you for your perspective. ANC 1B has already passed a resolution asking for the fire and police use of the site to be maintained. So if my understanding of the separation of powers is that the council is going to be either hesitant or unable to pass a law saying a police station must be at this site. I could be wrong about that. And I would encourage you to come to the special meeting of the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, sorry, Tucker, all due respect, you've got the commissioner, or I'm sorry, the council member's representative here. She's telling us right now, this is the reason why it wasn't specifically designated that way in the legislation that was proposed is because, I'm sorry, what was her exact, Nicole, I'm sorry, what was your exact, that's not how it's been done in the past. Do you have specific examples of why, or you didn't seem to be able to speak to why that couldn't go in the legislation?
I mean, I'm hard pressed to think of an example where we have legislated the exact location of a public service like this. There's a lot of things that go into that decision. Happy to follow up. I don't want to misspeak on behalf of the council member on this one, but that's just, I don't know that it's appropriate for us to decide the exact location of all of these things via
It's just appropriate to tell the constituents up until now that they're coming back, but then when an opportunity comes to actually put it in writing and you're chickening out, it's kind of weird. It doesn't inspire confidence.
The question is legislation the appropriate mechanism to give people the guarantee that they're desiring? I don't know that it is. Happy to speak with the council member about that and follow up at the next meeting. But I continue to do my best to reiterate that there's no one making these decisions who has ever said that they won't return. So this fear that they won't is not based in anyone ever suggesting that they won't.
You just want the the council member and the council and the mayor want
We're going to have some other neighbors have a chance to speak now, if that's all right.
Well, I mean, I wasn't talking for my full 2 minutes, but that's fine.
You are actually over, and I didn't hear any questions in there. These are just statements.
I
And
mean,
they're-
Nicole spoke for part of my thing. It's fine.
do you have another question, or is there another comment that you would like to make?
I'm more of a conversational guy. I don't think these are very productive, little tit for tats for 2 minutes. So I
I
would
asked
really
you a
welcome an
simple question.
offline
Do
conversation.
you have another question or another comment to make?
Yeah, I would love if Nicole, you, Tucker, we could, circle up offline and actually, make some progress rather than, just 2-minute quips here and there.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Jones. Right before we go to the next neighbor to speak, I just want to remind everybody that the Economic Development Committee is aiming to have exactly an opportunity for what you're asking for, Mr. Jones, which is a special meeting on a weekend day, either toward late June, late this month, or early July, where we aim to have members of Councilmember Nadeau's office, members of DEMPED, and obviously the Economic Development Committee itself there to facilitate a feedback session on the bill. And we can talk, and that is something that we can ask the bill to be changed to include. Cedric, would you please give Chris O the ability to speak? Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you, thank you.
Thank you. Yep, this is Chris Otten. I'm curious because, we all make mistakes and we're told certain things. We were told split zoning wasn't possible at this site, 1617 U Street. It actually is. We're finding out now. And now we're hearing about this legislation. Oh, there's some limitations. I think Commissioner Jones is saying there's some separation of powers that the council can't guarantee certain things. But yet this legislation, as I read it, is guaranteeing, it is meddling, and it is micromanaging with the mayor, and what the mayor cannot do. The mayor cannot do by this legislation, cannot reduce the amount of affordable housing below 30%. So indeed, this legislation is managing the mayor in terms of this disposition and not reducing the affordable housing below 30%. And indeed, this legislation could equally say 50% of the units should be affordable housing, or maybe even 70% if we wanted to get it up to the social housing parameters. Simultaneously, the legislation could also say that the fire station and police station need to come back. And so the micro meddling by the council, or as I like to say it, just managing mayoral expectations about what happens, what she can do at this site, can clearly be done legislatively. There's properties all around the city, public properties, where dispositions and things happen, where things are written in that they have to do, like libraries down at the West End, fire stations down at the West End, various places. We can look it up. So I say this is an open slate for this commission to actually demand what you guys want to see happen here and ensure that our council member puts it in the legislation. And in fact, the timeline isn't one by which, as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Rivero, we got a budget season, then they're going to go into closed session for the summer. It hasn't come out of committee yet. There's no committee hearings yet. They probably won't have a committee hearing on this until like the fall. And so I think we should all be exploring this together and not rush this, maybe like we did on the split zoning stuff for the zoning aspects of this.
Neighbor Otten, you've exceeded your time by about 40 seconds. I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk. Is there any concluding remark you'd like to make?
Yeah, I just hope that the commission sees this as an opportunity to win the things that you've heard from your constituents that we want at this site.
Thank you. Nicole, it sounded like there was a question about process that you may want to respond to, or I can go ahead to the next speaker.
Yeah, it's sitting with the committee, with McDuffie's committee right now, so It'll be up to him whether he brings it to a hearing, and these are all great comments to bring to a committee hearing so that the committee can consider them. So I would encourage folks, if and when it does come up for hearing, to use that process as well.
Thank you. And Cedric, would you please allow Ms. Honeycutt to speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you guys so much for doing this. I so appreciate it. I just wanted to share that someone who represents our historic preservation unit shared with me that for a very long time, the zoning has been considering the parking lot behind the Black Cat for fire service and police station service. And so I think that information that was shared with me, as well paired with the many conversations that I've followed with DEMPED about the services returning and sort of the lack of wanting to commit to it and actually going out of their way to use language that gives them some freedom, really makes it feel like it's not a totally transparent situation. And kind of both of those things come together and make me feel like it's just not as transparent as we would like it to be. And so I so appreciate, Nicole, you being here and this bill where you are trying to be in front of and demanding what we want here. And to me, if you can do it with housing, again, I'm not savvy to these things, but if you can do it with housing, I would also concur with everybody else who's talked and said that we would like to ask for the services to be included there too. And also just more transparency, because it does seem like the kind of going around this is not, it doesn't foster trust. And thank you all for doing that. And I'm excited that you're doing the meeting too, that we can talk about other ideas in more detail as well. Really appreciate that.
Great. Thank you. I forget, Commissioner Trindade-Ramo, have you spoken on this topic yet?
No, and I only want to make a quick point that there's no reason that it's not even possible to have a hearing on this bill before your committee, Commissioner Jones, would meet at the end of June. So, right, I mean, it's basically impossible that the council would move that fast. Nicole's shaking her head to agree. So certainly no action is going to happen before Commissioner Jones has his Economic Development Committee hearing or meeting at the end of this month. So I think everyone should please stay tuned for the date and time of that and bring these concerns, and it can certainly be put in writing and taken to that. And hopefully the council member staff will be there directly to talk through these in more detail.
Great. Thank you. And Commissioner Sycamore, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. One thing I would like Ms. Rivero to kind of recognize is that I think you're seeing a lot of frustration from the community because they have been lied to and things have been changing quite a bit. And a lot of people feel like the carpet's been pulled out from underneath them. What I'd like to remind you is that your job is to take these concerns to our council member. And just because you're saying, oh, well, this has never been done before, this isn't how typically it's done, put it in the legislation. Bring that back to Councilmember Nadeau and let the committee decide. Let McDuffie's committee decide on what is appropriate and what is not. Because at least that way you can say and turn back and say, hey, at least we tried. This is where the frustration is coming from. When you just throw your hands in the air and just say, well, this has never been done before, we don't know what we're doing, or we don't think we can do this. You don't know until you try. So this is where the frustration is coming from our community members. And I echo everything that Randy has said and Chris Otten has said. There's been a lot going on. There's been a lot of changes. And now with this new information from Miss, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, or the last speaker, it's frustrating. And there's such a idea that the council member is really not committed to keeping this here unless you at least fight to try to keep that in that legislation. And that's where the frustration from the community is coming from. That's where my frustration is coming from, that the council member and yourself are just combative and you're not actually taking this time to listen to the community. Thank you so much.
If I could just respond very briefly, I don't want to misspeak for the council member. As I said, I haven't spoken with her about the option of including a requirement. And so, as I've already said, I will bring this to her. I've already messaged our legislative director that this was raised tonight for him to consider. I'm very aware of what my role is here, is to be a bridge between the community when I attend these meetings and the council member. So I will be bringing it back to her, but I can't speak to her opinion about whether she will want to include this in legislation without speaking it with her about it. And so I will do so. I've already flagged it as we're sitting here. And as I said, I'm happy to come to the next meeting ready to share her opinion on that.
All right, wonderful. That's what I was just about to ask. Thank you. I appreciate that.
For your comments.
And I think Commissioner Handerhan has the final thoughts on this topic.
Ooh, no pressure. I'll super quick in bullet form. I think we should listen to what the neighbors are saying around transparency. I think they're right. I think that the situation has changed. Personally, this feels like a DemPed issue to me, and anything we can do to hold DemPed accountable. I started in a very different place with this project. It's been very frustrating that the situation has changed on the ground. I don't think we were ever intentionally lied to, but I do think that things we were told turned out to not be the reality that we were in later. And however that's framed, it's incredibly frustrating. So I would just say that frustration with DemPed feels very real to me. And we should do anything we can to endorse transparency in this process and represent the kind of points that have been made around, being explicit where we can. It doesn't mean they're going to listen to us. I think that's, something we should be thoughtful about asking the district to do something we know they're not going to do. But I think this is a case where we can come up with something to address the very legitimate frustrations.
Thank you. And just a reminder as we close out this topic, again, it's the intention of the Economic Development Committee of ANC 1B to hold a special meeting on the Council Bill 25-0802, which would lock in certain requirements about the 1617 U Street and 1620 V Street sites. That the intention is to have that toward either the end of June or early July. And there will be full communication, as with all of ANC 1B's meetings, via our website, via our social media, and via our email list. So looking forward to seeing you there once dates are determined. Most likely, almost certainly, it will be on a weekend date to accommodate our neighbors who work or have other obligations during the week. The next topic is one that Chair Harris added to the agenda, so I'd like to give her the floor for that.
Okay. So I know this is a hot topic, so we are going to be very conscious of time on this. We have already spent, or at least many of the commissioners on here, including myself, have spent, and a lot of the community members have spent 30+ hours around this topic. This has to do with the map amendment at 1617 U Street. So if you are looking at our agenda, it says a limited scope hearing. That has actually changed, and there will not be a limited scope hearing on 1617. Right now, it is slated for a meeting, not a hearing, on July 11th. Now that could change, and we will keep the community updated as we know. That was decided upon last Thursday by the Zoning Commission, and we're happy to send out the recording that the Zoning Commission had on this. But again, that will kind of be decided on July 11th in terms of if they're ready to vote, if they are going to reopen the record, all of those things. Now, what I do want to discuss tonight is a revised report from Office of Planning for a reduction of the boundaries for MU10. Let me go ahead and pull up my screen. This was released on May 20th. So again, this was after the Economic Development Committee meeting. This was really close to the Memorial Day weekend. So this is why we're talking about it at the meeting today. Also with, again, the recent information from the Zoning Commission about their July 11th meeting and not the limited scope hearing that was released last Thursday when we already released our agenda. So apologies if anyone thinks that we are behind or not reporting things. Again, this is just information that we're getting kind of in real time almost. So let me go ahead and share my screen with the Office of Planning's revised report. And this is publicly accessible. This is on the case record. We can also share it out. So the Zoning Commission, I should also say, is asking for Office of Planning to come back with, I may be messing up the exact technicalities, but it's coming back with a report on why this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and how it's consistent with some of the community feedback that they heard. So as you can see, currently, this is what it looks like on the left. I don't know if you all see my cursor, but you see the MU4. This was the original proposed boundary. So it was the entire site of 1617 and was it 1620? Or was that six? I don't know, but y'all know what I mean. It's this boundary.
1620.
And then it has been revised to include, to be limited to this zone right here, which is just the inner parts because they heard the community's feedback on the potential tension for MU10 on the V Street side. So this has been limited to the U Street side. Now, the Zoning Commission is also looking for feedback from the ANC, or at least to acknowledge that we saw this revised report. Now, I want to make sure, I'm going to take this off my screen. I can get a link to this, or Cedric, if you can find it and then share it. What I want to make sure though is, since we've last voted, which was April of 2023 on this, there has been no motion to rescind our prior vote. We have discussed 1617 U Street at almost every meeting since, but there has been no motion made by any commissioner here. Now, what I believe we need to do in this instance to adequately respond to the Zoning Commission is that I believe we need to write a letter to the Zoning Commission reaffirming our support, attaching our prior resolution, which contains just the overall support and of an MU10, which this contains.
No.
Finish, Commissioner Kinsick, and then you can have the floor to make a comment.
Enough is enough with this.
Madam Chair, point of order. Commissioner Kinsick does not have the floor.
I recognize your point of order. Commissioner Kinsick, can you go ahead and put yourself on mute, please? We will get to your comments. Thank you. I want to advise that Office of Planning will be doing an official calculation of this. And I believe the Attorney General's office will also be doing this. But based on the limited scope or the limited boundaries of this, there will be a pretty steep reduction in housing and affordable housing with this, where they're projecting 140 to 175 units lost. And I know that is really important to the community, so I wanted to recognize that. But tonight, what we do need to do as a commission is vote on a letter reaffirming our support of an MU10 zone. Okay. So we're going to be very conscious of time. We've already voted on time limits. And I know that people have strong opinions about this. Please keep to the time limits and please make sure that it is not personal. Okay, Commissioner Kinsick.
Yes, a couple of things. 14 months ago, when we decided to vote on this, There is two commissioners who are now no longer with us. There's now two new commissioners, Frank Showman of 1B02 and Secretary Duramo 1B06. That's one point. I don't know, because I had no response back from anybody on this call of the commissioners about the letters I've sent that I've received from Gregory Adams, which is a party of the Black Neighbors, which talks about displacement. I also want to point out that 14 months ago, when we did call the vote, I was under the impression, and it's no fault to any of us on this call, including you, Chair, that we could not do split zoning, and we've factually found out we can. So there's been a lot of changes around this agenda of what we thought of or agreed to 14 months ago. So I think just to rubber stamp it and say, let's do this again, I could be honest with you, dealing with it for 14 months front hand for most of 1B07 and 1B05, just mainly those two SMDs, but 1B in general, I don't want to rubber stamp this. I don't want to go through another 14 months of this. It's time consuming. As you like to point out on every call, we do this pro bono, so there's only so much we can do, but we do have great weight. Again, with the points that, I don't want to rush the vote. I don't know what the purpose is, where we can just send a letter asking for some sort of extension, saying, possibly, hey, we'd like to bring this back to our Economic Development Committee and possibly even at our Zoning Committee, because I think down the road, that's really where it should go back into. So have those two committees discuss it, come back to us. We then listen to what they have said. We can then also get more feedback from people that have not had the opportunity to speak. And we could then do this properly, not like we did 14 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sycamore.
Yes, I'd like to echo everything that Commissioner Kensick said. I don't think that this commission is the same, or it actually factually is not the same. It needs to go back to committee. It needs to go back to public discussion. It needs to go back to the public and see where things actually lie within public opinion. At this point, I am not at all resolved to support anything here until we get more public input on this, because this is essentially a whole new project now. This isn't what we were voted on, which I was against prior to this, but we need to go back and talk to everybody in the community and send it back to the appropriate committees and then bring it back to the ANC. It's been 14 months. There's no reason why we can't continue this for another 2. And if Commissioner Kensick, I will yield my time back to you if you would like to take on my minute left.
No, we're not doing that. That is not how this works.
Oh, since when? All right, then I can just keep on talking. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Or I can just sit here. That's weird. I've never heard of that parliamentary procedure before, but that's fine. But no, yeah, let's hear what the community has to say. There's obviously been a lot of feedback. There's been a lot of pushback, and nobody here on this commission, at least from our past commission when we had 2 other commissioners, have not been responsive or receptive or sympathetic to the community's concerns and needs. So yeah, we need to start this whole process really back at ground zero, because it's a whole new plan. And I refuse to force this down anyone's throat and reaffirm our support for something that really the community does not want. And I don't think that's fair. And I hope that this commission votes this down, as we will not have a support for this. Thank you.
Just as a point of reference, it is not a brand new project. It is still the same. They have just limited the boundaries of the MU10 based on the community's feedback. So the surrounding areas outside from U Street will remain as MU4, what the current zone is today. Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, so I just first had a question just to sort of clarify. So with the reduction of affordable housing, is that because the MU10 is now going to be smaller, therefore housing the police and the fire station, and then just limiting, yes? Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, it's because the MU10 size is limited.
And so at that point, would there still be a housing structure on there that would just be smaller? Is that what we're saying? Okay.
That's
And
what OP, but just as, I mean, I think you know this, I just want to provide just overall clarification. This is simply for a map amendment for a limited area of the parcel. There's no development currently proposed there. And so the housing estimates were simply estimates provided, not actual things set in stone.
yeah. And so I would just add that I think, with, what Commissioner Kensick brought up about people being concerned about displacement, I do think that if we do this map amendment, that it could work out in the favor of those who are worried about displacement, because therefore, being a smaller building with a smaller AMI, I think would have less impact on the property value around the area as opposed to if the building were larger. So I also think that it might be good for the map amendment to go down to the smaller size of the parcel. So I'm in favor of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Handerhan.
Just from a process perspective, Chair Harris, can you just restate the timing for tonight versus like in a month on the vote?
Yeah, so the zoning commission has recommended that the parties weigh in on this, and we are one of the parties for this case because we are the ANC of record. 2B will also be weighing in. This was decided upon on Thursday, so again, this is not something that we've been withholding. If it was decided earlier, we obviously would have told the community earlier, but this was decided upon on May 30th. So based on, that and looking back at our original resolution, this is not different from what we had already passed in 2023. So I know that, there's feedback that we have new commissioners. I get that. There were 2 new commissioners. But this is simply what we need to do is either vote on a letter of reaffirmation or not, but the zoning commission is expecting to hear from us. And I would imagine that they are going to hear from the parties in opposition and other supporting parties as well. So it's in our responsibilities to respond to this. And we need to do it on, okay, sorry, you said timeline. Okay, so July 11th, we had rescheduled our ANC meeting because of 4th of July. So that's why we are also voting on this month as opposed to next month, because July 11th is our meeting date. But again, this is not an entirely new project. This is really what OP has been suggesting. It's just a smaller zone, and they took in what the community was saying of having concerns with the potential height and density on the V Street side, and even on potentially, on mostly the V Street side. I'm going to leave it there. Commissioner Handerhan, did that answer it?
Yeah, and the next meeting is also on July 11th?
The meeting, our ANC meeting is July 11th, yes.
Oh, sorry, but the next meeting
So
on
it's
this.
not, so the zoning commission, it's a meeting, it's not a hearing. So it's a meeting where they are just going to discuss.
Yeah, I said, yeah, the zoning.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Important clarification. Yeah.
Yeah, that was made clear to me too.
And sorry, do we know when that meeting is?
The zoning commission?
Yeah.
July 11th.
Oh, it is. Okay. So, I mean, one thing I just need to think about on my own is like, if they were amenable to getting something that same day, just the timing is really unfortunate. I just think it's really unfortunate. That's what I'm struggling with right now.
I don't think that's something we should stress. We already voted on a resolution for this, and I get it that people are saying that it was months and months ago. However, no one has raised a motion since to rescind that resolution. We have spoken about this every single meeting since that initial resolution. We have also been on, I think most of us even on here have been on some of the hearings I was on all of the hearings, so there have been ample.
But Chair Harris, but by that logic, wouldn't it also be like our resolution's on the record? There's no reason to affirm it if it's on the record.
It's a letter reaffirming, or it's a letter stating, here's our resolution again.
Oh, I'm just saying that your point about like no one's asked to pull that resolution, I think stands by the fact that that's our resolution. I don't know. It does feel like it's on a bit of a mixed message around transparency and but I do also want to push back on something some commissioners had said around. I know my time is approaching
Well,
up. So.
okay, I'm just gonna say, I think it's actually pretty transparent. If we didn't say anything at all tonight, that would be a lack of transparency.
That's I don't think that's true. I don't think it's how the community would perceive it, unfortunately.
I guess what I'm also stating is what would be different if we held another meeting on this? Like, the project is not changing.
Well, it's a revised application, so why not let their
Not a
committee?
revised application, it is a revised report. It even says it's a oh no, you know what? I am wrong. But based on, wait. Based on what the commission said, though, they said it's a report.
Okay, well, either way, they're amending it. So if they're amending it, it's not apples to apples. It's different. It's different 14 months later. And I'm going to echo what Vice Chair just said as well, that it does look like a lack of transparency. And that was one of the biggest reasons why you and I were on so many calls, mostly you, but going through this process. And you brought up a good point about the motion. Again, like I said to you on the calls, I don't know a commissioner would motion against it if there's how 6 or 7 people are going to vote when there's 9 people. So it's kind of, why would someone motion something they know it's going to fail? It doesn't. So you keep saying that. Would you motion something?
I keep saying that because that is how our body operates. So if you wanted to raise a motion to rescind the support of the resolution, you're within full right to do that. You are also in your right to talk to the other commissioners. I'm not the only one on here. You're not the only one on here to get a sense if they would like to rescind it. So I keep bringing up that point because there has been ample opportunity. Now, that doesn't mean that it's successful, but there's been ample opportunity to do that.
I just don't want us to be stuck in the same position again. I do find the timeliness of Councilmember Nadeau to send that in right when we are coming to an end, which I felt from listening to Chair Hood. He had many concerns. I'm not sure how many other commissioners participated or listened to these. I know you did, Chair, but they had a lot of reservations. Even the vice chair did as well. And then suddenly Councilmember Nadeau dropped something and we're all supposed to now just... Okay, so I just, again, I feel like the community is going to have the same issue that we've already had in the past, that we're just kind of pushing something through, rubber stamping it, and we're basically reiterating what we said 14 months ago. It just seems a little confusing, and I don't really understand it.
Martinsick, I'm sorry, I did give you extra time, so I'm going to move on. Commissioner Sigmore, I'm going to move on to Commissioner Trindade Duramo and then the community, and then I'll circle back to you.
Go to the community, please, first. I'll come back around.
Okay, Cedric, go ahead and take Ms. Fiskanich off of mute, and Commissioner Trindade Duramo, can you go ahead and start the timer?
Okay, thank you for the opportunity here. I just wanted to make one correction. Chair Harris, you said that the Zoning Commission asked OP to weigh in on whether this revised proposal was consistent, and that's not what they asked. They asked the they asked the Office of Planning to submit a new written submission by June 13th to say why their revised proposal of MU4, MU10 split is preferable to any of the other options that are also not inconsistent with the comp plan. So that's one, they were asking for preferability, why MU10 is else. And is the ANC, are all the ANC commissioners aware that there are other options available that are also not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan? Because those are in a document that the Office of Planning submitted, I think back in April, and they have a table of other options that would be more reasonable for this area, more consistent with the neighborhood conservation area, more consistent with the historic districts that surround this particular site, and more in line with what the community really needs. And one other point I'd like to make, and so the ANC, I agree with the other commissioners who were saying we need to take a better look at this and start public discussions, because you've had no discussions about these other alternative options with the community. And I think that definitely needs to happen before any vote is taken by the ANC. And one other thing, during the hearings, it was made very, very clear that MU10 harms the community, especially the Black neighbors. It causes displacement, and it's just not feasible or reasonable for this particular site. MU10 causes harm to our neighborhood, and that's why we're so against it.
Thank you.
Oh, and
okay. Go ahead and take the next person, Ian Hawksworth, off of mute, please. Commissioner Trindade Duramo, can you please start the timer?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So thanks very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. Let me echo what's all.
Okay. Sorry, apologies. I thought you were breaking up, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I'll sit up straight. It'll come as no surprise to you that I and others think that this process has been somewhat dismissive of the community's concerns and somewhat secretive. And I know it's not the responsibility for this falls on a number of parties, but I think it's fair to say that given the huge impact this project will have, what you have learned from the 30 hours of community discussion, which is, a tremendous amount of frustration, that it's completely legitimate to take a step back and re-examine this for at least a couple of weeks. It seems unreasonable that you want to force this through now at the end, a Thursday evening. It comes up, it's not even on the agenda. It's not really a good way to go about this, and I wonder if you were the other side of this dispute, Chair Harris, if you wouldn't also be up in arms. So please think about that and think about your role as representative of this community. You have a responsibility to preserve it and protect it, and not just railroad it. Thank you.
I am very aware of my responsibility, which is why I've been on every single hearing that the Zoning Commission has held. I have been in discussion with commissioners to try to figure out a solution to this. I was under the impression that this, again, was what I heard the community was looking for based on those hearings with the concerns about MU10 directly abutting, especially the V Street side. However, I understand that this feels very rushed, although we've been talking about this for a year. So there is potential options. I'm letting commissioners know, and I'm letting the community know. Obviously, if you still have comments about this, you can make it. We can also, so one, economic development has not met yet this month, so they can meet on this. We can call a special meeting at the end of June. The reason why we can't have our regular ANC meeting at the first Thursday of July, it's because the first Thursday of July is 4th of July, and I don't think anyone wants to join an ANC call on the 4th of July. Totally respect that and understand that. So that's why I'm suggesting a special meeting to vote on something to send to the commission. Not saying we reaffirm, whatever it is, we vote on something. So we call a special meeting at the end of June. Then we can get this to the zoning commission in time for their meeting on the 11th. Now, I know I can request an extension from the zoning commission. I can only request an extension, I think, on the time that we submit our comments, but just so we can keep this process moving. Now, if we feel at economic development like there's still not enough time, we can approach that then. But how does that sound to everyone? Does that sound a little bit better?
I think that's fair.
Okay.
Sounds very good to me, Chair.
Okay, so I'm gonna kick it back over to the community comments. Commissioner Sycamore, I see your hand, so I will get back to you. But I'm gonna kick it back over to the community comments. But so, just so everyone is on the same page, what we are going to do is economic development is going to meet on, Commissioner Jones, can you reaffirm the 20th, June 20th?
That is correct.
Okay,
Thursday.
so we will likely schedule a special meeting. We have to call it within, we can schedule it now at our ANC meeting under administrative. We would schedule a special meeting on June 27th. Does that work for everyone potentially? I know we can vote on this later, but does that sound good? Okay. Commissioner Trindade Duramo, and then we're going to go to community comments.
Yeah, or I mean, I guess this is a call for Commissioner Jones. Is it possible that the committee will not produce a document that the ANC, the full commission, needs to examine?
I mean, it is possible that the Economic Development Committee will fail to pass any motions. That's always the case. But I will do my best to have something pass. And even in the absence of a motion, I still think that Chair Harris's proposal of a special meeting specifically on the changes to the zoning case 23-02 is the appropriate move, regardless of whether the Economic Development Committee is able to come to a majority vote or not.
And we don't need to wait on a motion from economic development. I think what I'm hearing from the community is that they want another forum to talk about this. So even if there isn't a motion put forward, we as commissioners have the final say, so we can push a motion forward for whatever it is. I'm not saying affirmation or the other side, but I think that's the best, and we will vote on this in the administrative section for a special meeting. Commissioner Chauvin, and then I'm going to go back to the community. Commissioner Sycamore, if you want to make your comment after Commissioner Chauvin, I know I keep kicking yours, but go ahead.
Yeah, just have a operational question regarding the pending Economic Development Committee meeting. I mean, what is it explicitly? I mean, who do we need there to be, reflective or capacitated with the ability to answer some questions? I mean, is there anything that comes to mind, Commissioner Jones?
I'm gonna chime in. We'll see if we can have Office of Planning there, and we'll also see if we can have DEMPED there. We did try to reach out to see if Office of Planning could attend tonight's meeting. They did not reply.
Shocking.
Okay, Cedric, can you go ahead and take Mr. Gregory Adams off of mute, please?
Thank you, Chair Harris and other commissioners. I just want to make a point that in future deliberations about the 1617 U Street, I would hope that the commissioners would take into account that the Office of Planning in their revised plan failed to do any of the outreach for which they were criticized for not doing in the first place. So I'd like for you all to keep that in mind. Also, I'd like for you to pay special attention to the fact that, as our expert witness pointed out in the zoning commission hearings, MU10 inherently displaces communities of color. That's been generally seen, and I hope that that's also something that you all will seriously consider in your future deliberations. And that's all I have to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Adams, I'd love to get to talk to you more about this. If you would like to send me an email, that'd be fantastic.
Cedric, can you go ahead and take Mr. Randy Jones off of mute?
Hey, everybody, just a simple request. I guess, appreciate the fact that you're going to kick this over to the Economic Development Committee. I guess you have advisory committees for this purpose. And that's another form of citizen engagement, which is really the heart of an ANC. I'd like to, I was kind of educated over the email front last night over the history on this, but this is a zoning commission case, and I understand there was a past decision to handle it through the UDC. I think this would be a great opportunity to, get it on the ZPD committee, which I'm obviously a member on. I think it's a zoning commission case. That committee ought to weigh in and maybe, use its expertise. We have an architect, we have a developer, we have, a representative from Howard on there. These are active citizens who we want advising your group. That's why you guys appointed us. And I think it would make sense to at least discuss it on that committee meeting as well. I know Commissioner Jones is hard pressed for time on that meeting and then ultimately the following month's meeting. But look, it's a zoning case. It should be on the zoning preservation and development radar. You should want people informing you with that through that lens, and to kind of not do that, I think is a missed opportunity here. And it would just kind of sour me as well as the rest of the neighborhood on your ability to listen rather than just act. Thank you.
I'm sorry to any community members who feel that even though we've spent 20+ hours on this and each of us at different zoning commission hearings, that we haven't gathered enough input. I'm sorry you feel that way. We are trying to open this up more to gather even more. Mr. Jones, I know you're new to the zoning commission or the ZPD committee. This is just how we've run things. Anytime there's a public parcel, it goes through economic development. And we do have experts on economic development who have also worked on projects extensively in the past. So I wouldn't want to minimize their experience either. But I leave it up to the discretion of Commissioner Jones, who is the chair of the committee. He can certainly bring that up, but traditionally in the past, and this is several years prior, we've had a separate line between public parcels for economic development, which represent large scales of economic development, and ZPD representing more of the BZA, HPRB hearings and things. So that has been the line. But again, I leave it up to the chair of ZPD to decide that. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to give a little bit of background to what Mr. Jones, our neighbor, is talking about, there are a number of issues just across the board that could fall into multiple committees. This includes frequently issues with alcohol serving establishments involve public safety. But we try to handle the stuff related to alcohol establishments in the ABR committee. We try to manage public safety, non-alcohol related public safety issues with the Public Safety and Community Engagement Committee. The reason for this is we try to be respectful of our committee members' time and not have and avoid two things. One is redundant discussions, and two is discussions that cut out the wrong people. I would encourage Mr. Randy Jones and other people who are interested in this topic to join the Economic Development Committee meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 20th, where we will talk about this issue again. But I do not see any reason process-wise why we should have the same discussion in two different committees. That it does not seem like a respectful use of of any of our neighbors' time.
Thank you. Commissioner Sycamore.
So two things. One, I completely disagree with Commissioner Jones. I think it's more than appropriate to have a single issue brought up in two different committees because you're bringing two different perspectives to an issue. Just because it's a development project doesn't mean it's exclusively within zoning. It is also a safety and an economic issue, safety and a zoning issue. I think bringing more perspectives to a single issue actually enhances our decision-making process as opposed to just listening to one small group of committee members. That's number one. Number two, and I think this will probably be brought up in new business, but when is Commissioner Jones's chairmanship up? Because this was only supposed to be temporary, and I would like to possibly move on to a new chairperson for that, since obviously Commissioner Jones has been very overwhelmed with a lot of his other committee and his other commitments. So I'd like to really address that issue as well at some point.
There wasn't a time limit on it, and we can absolutely discuss that in the next meeting. But I also trust that Commissioner Jones, if he is overwhelmed, to let us know if he is. We are all adults here, so I don't want to assume anything. And so, but I also trust if he's saying, and this is in our standard operating procedures and our bylaws, it's his discretion as the chair of that committee to raise this topic or not. He's also the chair of economic development and will be raising that there as well too. If we need another meeting on this topic, I'm sure we can find time to schedule another meeting on this. But
well, I'm just concerned he's said it tonight already twice that he was already so busy with everything. So I'm just wondering why can't we bring this up? If there's a so it's not a temporary chairmanship, it's a permanent chairmanship until he decides to give it up.
No,
Sycamore, I said no such thing about being overwhelmed. I'm sorry that you have misunderstood anything that I've said this evening.
Okay, we're going to leave it at that. We can certainly raise it the next meeting, but I don't think that's relevant to this right now. Commissioner Handerhan, and then I do want to get back to the community members who have had their hands raised. Commissioner Fields, I will bring it back to you after this. Wait, do you still have your hand raised, Commissioner Handerhan?
Yeah, just super quick. Commissioner Jones and I did have a conversation about jurisdiction for this site a long time ago, and I think it's always worth asking these questions. I do think that this is specific to 1617, and the best solution here, rather than changing jurisdictions of committees, would be to have as many of the right people as possible come to the Economic Development Committee meeting. That's just my opinion. I understand the perspectives that are being shared. I do think Commissioner Jones has done a great job of, running those meetings and making sure that it doesn't. My experience with the ones I've attended is that everyone's kind of in the same space in a way that allows for really rich conversation. So I would encourage people to come and engage in that way. And thank you, Commissioner Jones, for running it that way. And I just think that's what made most sense. I mean, part of what I worry about here is that there's so many meetings for all of us, and we all have lives, and it's you don't want to make it so that just the people who can put everything on hold are able to come and engage, and we always have to strike a balance so we can hear from everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to reiterate for commissioners, we haven't even gotten past our first committee report, so it's already 8:40. So let's, if there are any other comments aside from you, Commissioner Fields, I know you haven't commented on this yet. Let's try to keep it moving forward. Cedric, can you go ahead and take Ms. Bridget Honeycutt off of mute?
Hi, I'm thrilled if there is a chance to talk about this because it was positioned as this is what they've come back with after hearing community input. But I think all of you who have participated in these hearings would know that it falls very short from doing that. The concerns were always about the historic neighborhood on V and 17th Street, and 17th Street is still going to have an MU10 there. And even on U Street, there was concerns. The majority of U Street on that block is 2 stories. So MU10, like, you know, as a community member, 3 of the 4 zoning commissioners very clearly stated that MU10 was too big and not appropriate for this site. And I think some of the frustration, just to give you some feedback, I think, you know, like to echo what Ian had said, some of you, Chairperson Harris, you were on all the meetings, but also it was very much noticed that you were actually tweeting your frustrations about your own constituents' testimonies. And a bunch of people who you made it sort of like a NIMBY-YIMBY thing. And it was really disappointing because you guys are our representatives, and you are very impressive. I could see you having such a great future, but to see that really was disheartening and disappointing. And I think then to see you push this through and advocate like this again, it just again feels like you are so set and that you're not really hearing us. And there are a lot of people with really good feedback that aren't anti-development. We want good things for this neighborhood. Use us. We've got a lot of expertise. We have a lot of information. And it's not like we're just anti everything, but I feel like your frustrations with the public in this are very clear, and you're tweeting it to that extent. And it was just really disappointing.
You can convey all of those pieces of feedback at Economic Development, and I make no apologies for my personal Twitter account. Cedric, can you go ahead and take Mr. Chris Otten off of mute?
It's not personal, Chair Harris. You know that. As you know through my situation, it's not personal.
It is.
Oh, no, it's not.
Twitter account.
All right.
Madam Chair, point of order, Commissioner Sycamore does not have the floor.
You interrupted Commissioner Sycamore for, are you going to keep calling point of orders, or do we have to do that to you too? Let's all be fair.
All right, Commissioner Kinsick, Commissioner Sycamore, let's
Jones, right? Let's include everyone.
You don't need to include everyone. He did not interrupt anyone except for point of order, and I did not recognize that point of order, so let's keep moving. Mr. Otten, you can take yourself off of mute.
Am I off mute?
Yep.
Thank you, Chairperson Harris. Appreciate that. You know, as a former commissioner myself, I'm happy to hear we can still engage on this, because there's always new info. Despite all these meetings we go through, it's always those last couple of reports that come in, right? And those hearings that happen at the end that sort of really kind of distill and resolve things. Some of those some of that new info that we saw come in during the hearings that you guys didn't have a year ago is that MU10 displaces our most vulnerable people, residents, and businesses. It's just a fact by the expert opinion of science of what MU10 has done to people around the city over the last 20 years. But more importantly, and I really want the commissioners to take this into account before the next gathering, is the info at Exhibit 700, right? Because that's OP's report that came in at the end of the hearing after the close of hearings that shows this matrix of potentially other zones that won't harm our neighbors, right? A potential combination of split zoning, not just MU4, MU10, which is what they've landed on, unfortunately. They weren't listening to the Black neighbors and their experts of OP, unfortunately. But, you know, there is a whole series of other combinations that OP has put forward, plus the idea of even using special use zoning here. And so having OP in the room to talk about all that, I think is going to be important. You know, I was one of the 50 who testified, the 200 who wrote letters, and the 1,000 who signed the petition against MU10. It's going to harm our neighbors. And I get it. There's concerns about the reduction of affordable housing and the reduction of the zone per chance. But this is where that interplay between the legislation and zoning must be looked at closely here by the commission. Brianne Nadeau can say, we require more than 30%. We require 50% affordable housing at this site to make up for any loss, like in a reduction from MU10. So that I look forward to a conversation that's a bit more comprehensive that shows that interplay between the legislation and what's potentially allowable by zoning, and ultimately to protect our neighbors.
Okay,
Thank you.
Commissioner Fields.
Yeah. So I just want to say that I would like to propose that we potentially have a joint committee session, since Commissioner Jones does chair both economic development and zoning, because I do think that there is a strong lack of understanding of exactly what zoning means or requires, maximums and minimums, and the difference between what a zoning level would do and then what developers do with the zoning level. And so I think that we need to have a conversation about that so that there's a little bit more clarity for people who are weighing in on the situation. And I also would like to ask Mr. Adams and Mr. Oten and others who are saying that MU10 harms or displaces people to provide a little bit more evidence, if you could, via email or via an article, because I have not seen the MU10 displaces or harms communities of color. And then I also want to caution against us allowing one person to speak for the Black residents of 1617 U Street when we've only seen about 1 to 2 people, I think, that are Black or identify as Black come on the call and comment about this. Let's keep our comments to our individual perspectives, I think, because it's just a disservice when we just brand it one way. So I just wanted to weigh in on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Fields. Commissioner Jones, I still leave it up to your purview. You're the chair of both committees, so if you would like to hold that, you can certainly do that. But that's up to you.
Right now, the approach that I am most strongly considering is keeping this as the #1 topic at the Economic Development Committee's meeting scheduled on June 20th. And I will make a specific effort to reach out to every member of the ZPD committee and invite them to be there as well. I think that can manage, Commissioner Fields, your note and others' notes that they have perspectives that others should take account of as well. I think that that is a fair way to balance it and make sure that everybody gets their voice heard at one meeting that hopefully everybody can attend.
Thank you. Okay, we are moving on. I think we've heard the community. We will be hosting a economic development meeting specifically on 1617 U Street and the new revised application or report, whoever refers to it as what. And so we will be looking at that there, and then in our administrative section, so people understand, we will be voting on our to hold a special meeting on June 27th. So don't worry, I did not forget, but we will holding that meeting, and we will be specifically talking about 1617 there. Just so everyone is aware. And we will still be hosting our regularly monthly meeting on July 11th. Okay. We've already talked about the next meeting, which is Thursday, June 20th. You can register for that on Zoom. Sorry, I don't mean to take your thunder, Commissioner Jones, but we've just said it a lot.
One last note on that. There's been a couple of questions asking whether OP will attend. I want OP to attend. I will invite them to attend. I will call them up and do the best I can to make them attend. I am not in charge of OP, but I will invite OP and DIMPED to the ANC 1B Economic Development Meeting that will be held on Thursday, June 20th. Thank you.
We will make every effort to make sure they're there, but again, that we can only do our best in that. We can't force them to attend our meetings. Okay, Committee on Public Safety and Community Engagement, Commissioner Fields.
Yes, so we didn't meet for the month of June. As we all know, you can check MPD crime cards for a couple of stats as to what's going on in the area, and also request that from different leaders from different PSAs. They are giving out weekly or reports or monthly reports. I would do that, but I don't have access to my email as I'm out of the country right now. But our next meeting will be on June 11th, and so I hope you guys can attend. It'll be at 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Thank you. Transportation, Commissioner Lakatos.
Thank you. So we have one item. We have one resolution and one other item. So this month, the past month, the Transportation Committee considered a resolution commenting on WMATA's revised Better Bus project. Since this is WMATA's bus network redesign, They previously had come out with a visionary network last year. So this was a network that would rely on increased funding. This new version they have proposed is with existing funding. So I will pull up the resolution now. One thing I will caveat, I realized when I was in Microsoft Word, the draft is not on there, the little draft label. So just a heads up that that is not there, but it should be. Oh no, that is not what I was trying to share. This is what I was trying to share. Okay. So discusses that this is as I just mentioned, the context, that it's the Better Bus Network, that the ANC to provide its comment on that visionary network in June 2023, that they released this revised network, and the notes some of the changes that affects ANC 1B. So that includes the elimination of where the G2 connects to LeDroit Park. So it really just goes straight shot across. It would not like sort of loop up in the way it does to LeDroit Park now, which would reduce that kind of crosstown connection. It would, based on my reading of the maps, it would reduce the overall frequency of bus service on 14th Street as well as U Street and Florida Avenue. It would eliminate the long range 96 service connecting east of the river through ANC 1B to Upper Northwest. There would still be a connection through ANC 1B, but it wouldn't go all the way east of the river, as well as the elimination of some of the proposed visionary service increases that were really important to the community in the last resolution. So that includes a connection from U Street to DuPont Circle in Georgetown, replacing the eliminated D Street circulator extension, as well as the extension of the 70 buses down to the Southwest waterfront. We note how the circulator is now being eliminated, but then additionally, there was actually an effective cut in WMATA service on U Street, and then sort of goes through and then discusses the change in post-pandemic travel patterns, and then asks that WMATA prioritizes adding or maintaining existing levels of service on sort of the 90 series of buses and the 50 series of buses, so U Street, Florida Avenue, as well 14th Street. Asks that WMATA collaborate with DDOT to add service to substitute for this DC circulator elimination, as well as, looking into substituting that additional eliminated route, as well as asking that they extend their proposed route that would eliminate the G2 up to LeDroit Park, and ask that they provide clarity on what is the budgetary needs that WMATA would need to have in order to actually fulfill that visionary network. Does anyone have any questions?
Quick question.
Go ahead.
So this, I'm sorry, I was trying to take in a lot of this. I know I read it before, but this is what we are supporting is to maintain service of 96 or to support DDOT's proposal to take that away. I'm sorry to limit it from Southeast.
So we're asking that they not eliminate a connection between here, so like the sort of this crosstown Upper Northwest to Southeast connection, without some sort of like a substituted service.
Okay, yeah, because my big concern is getting people from Southeast to this area who maybe use it for commuting or any other purpose. So we were asking for an alternative to make sure that there is still a way for them to get here. Is that correct?
Yes,
and vice versa.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And there is someone with their hand raised. They in the audience. I don't know if that hand is from the previous item, but I just wanted to flag that. Chair Harris, should we take them off mute or what do you?
Yeah, or Cedric, can you go ahead and take Mr. Joseph Gorman off of mute?
Okay, hi, thank you. My name is Joseph Gorman. I live on Seton Street near 17th. I'm an architect. I also have a degree in urban planning. And there are just a bunch of issues that I just have to kind of highlight here.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Mr. Gorman. I just want to make sure we stay on topic here. Is this in relation to what Commissioner Lakatos was discussing? Or is this in relation to 1617 U Street?
Oh, it's 1617 U. Is it too late for that?
It's a bit late, but if you can keep it down to 1 minute and 45, we can go ahead and hear your comment. But just so you know, too, this is not the last bite of the apple to convey your thoughts. We do have our Economic Development Committee meeting on June 20th.
Okay. Well, you tell me. What should I do? I'm
Up to you. I'm giving you the floor. So you got a minute and 45, or if you want to push it to economic development.
okay. Well, I guess I can come back again, but so here are kind of my thoughts on this. The MU10, because I mean I am an architect, so I've seen this process, and the notion that you take a parcel that's zoned for 4 stories and say, okay, you know what, we're going to make it 10 stories, the entire lot, is, you know, essentially preposterous. There was no way there was ever going to be a 10-story building facing narrow D Street. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen, and everyone knew that. But the, you know, what the game is, you go for, you know, the biggest envelope possible, and then you pretend you're being you're giving back when you say, oh, sure, we'll do MU4 on B Street. Well, MU4 it should never have been even considered to be more than MU4 on B Street. I mean, it's a narrow street with small row houses, and their source of light is them facing south, and that would go away completely. So the notion that that's a give back is disingenuous at best. It's also the notion that that's also facing 17th Street, and I'm on Seton right at 17th. So so that's, you know, the notion. Also, I've heard reference to the interior part of the site. Well, it's not. It's all of it's most of 17th, and of course all of you. And the reality is this location, this historic location, doesn't support any of this activity. There were references in previous. Oh, am I up?
You are.
All right, I'll stop.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, you can absolutely make these comments and things at our June 20th economic development. It's June 20th, right? Am I like spouting off a date? Yes. Okay. June 20th at our economic development committee meeting. Okay. Are there any questions related to this, the Better Bus project? Sorry, I want to make sure that I have that right. Anything?
Just as a point of clarity, Chair, you can't tell members of the public what they can and cannot speak on. That's in Robert's rules, just as a reminder.
I was clarifying, we are in our agenda, and I was clarifying, and I did give him the floor. So I don't know what the issue is.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Lakatos.
I'd like to move that the full ANC adopt the 2024 Better Bus Project Comment Resolution as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
All right. The only other flag is just a repeat of what Matthew, the DDOT planner, said at the beginning. I'm going to send the information in the chat as well, that there are 2 safety walks happening for 14th Street. One on the 12th, June 12th, Wednesday at 5 p.m. and one Saturday, June 22nd at 9 a.m. Both are meeting at 14th and Euclid, so 2600 14th Street Northwest. The next Transportation Committee meeting is Wednesday, June 12th, later that evening, at 7 p.m. If you're interested in joining the committee, you can contact me at 1b04@anc.dc.gov. Thank you.
And Commissioner Lakatos, let's make sure we get those walks on the website so people can see that as well too. CPD, Commissioner Jones.
Sorry, I got lost in the agenda. I thought we were going to be one committee before that. One moment while I pull up the agenda.
All right. With you, I know there are several things here for awareness, so if you can get those, just touch on them briefly, since we will be discussing them at length at the next meeting.
Yep. So just a heads up, ANC 1B's ZPD meeting committee did not meet in May because at the end of the business day before that meeting, there were no items on its agenda. since then, in the couple of weeks since then, we've had a number of items show up, and those items continue to move around. I'm going to go through them really quick because some of them are no longer on the agenda for the next meeting. Howard University Hospital's redevelopment and proposed map amendment was anticipated to be on the June committee, ZPD committee agenda. I just heard from Howard University, and they have asked for that to be kicked until at least July. So that will not be on the agenda for the next ZPD meeting. The Baldwin House, which is located at in Single District 1B03 at 2570 Sherman Avenue Northwest, is requesting BZA special exemption to construct 2 additional residential units in a community service center and to an existing detached 3-story with cellar 6 apartment house in the RF1 zone. That will be one item we consider. The item at 1916 3rd Street Northwest is also being moved to the July agenda of the ZPD committee instead of the June, at the preference of the requesting party. The item listed in the agenda at 527 Florida Avenue Northwest, which is located in Single Member District 1B01, will be on the agenda. They're going for an area variance and special exemption to allow for a proposed addition of an open rear deck to an existing residential apartment building. And finally, there's one more item that will be on the agenda in June, which is at 1834 13th Street Northwest. That is a conceptual, this is a historic review. This is a conceptual review with HPRB for a 3rd floor addition over the existing building footprint. And that is in Single Member District 1B08. Again, because ZPD did not meet in May for lack of business, there are no motions for us to vote on at this time relating to ZPD. The next meeting of the ZPD committee is Monday, June 17th at 6:30 p.m. via Zoom. You can find it on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. ABR, Commissioner Fields.
All right, so there's a couple of establishments requesting a few changes. The first would be Franklin Hall, which is going to be requesting to add gaming to their establishment, which we had no problems with, so we're not protesting that decision. And then also we have Faux House, which is requesting a change from their license, which I believe is a Class C to a Class D restaurant license. So we don't, and I believe a change to their hours, and we don't have any objection to that. The only one that the ABR committee raised concern about was Whitlow's, which is moving to change their hours in order to make sure they're accommodating soccer fans who are coming there to watch games, and also coming there to meet to host soccer fan clubs events. And the only reason we decided to protest this on the grounds of peace, order, and quiet was because Frank wanted to make sure that they add certain things to their settlement agreement, and that he makes sure that the owner is able to meet with the community to discuss best means of practice. Frank, did you want to add anything to that or reasons for the protest?
No, just for everything you've said, there is a noise issue. It sits in the middle of the pending moratorium zone, and we want to ensure that folks in a residential zone, which is just adjacent to this area, are not impacted. So we'd like some input on noise operations and making sure that we can all work together to live harmoniously. So I've had discussions and we're planning a time to meet with John, the general manager.
Right, and we're going to invite everyone to that from ABR, right?
I hadn't planned. I'm just going to talk to John with a few neighbors who will be impacted.
Okay, well, I hope we can expand that out to community meetings for everyone else on ABR. But at this time, I move to protest a substantial change for Whitlow's on the grounds of peace, order, and quiet.
Do we have a second?
Request for amendment, just to further articulate that it's also on
do we have a second? Let's second this first, and then we have a second.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Commissioner Trindade DeRomo.
Not at length, please, but can you, I don't, either of the co-chairs of the ABR committee kind of give just a little, like, what is your theory of when we're protesting? I mean, if it seems like it's an amicable relationship with the owner, is it still worth the formal protest? How do I think about these?
It's so I will note that the vocabulary around this whole process is kind of it can be very charged. So the word protest, I mean, it can be charged, it can be a negative thing, but it does bring both parties to the table to discuss, and it kind of is that layer of accountability. So I understand the reasoning behind why we would protest to ensure that we can bring both parties, because there have been scenarios where we haven't, and we haven't been able to negotiate anything. So there hasn't been that layer of accountability. But the other thing that can happen here is that the changes in the settlement agreement could be reached very quickly, that the protest process just like doesn't even happen. So that's the other option, that if Commissioner Chauvin, since this is in his SMD, that's correct, right? This is in your SMD, that those things can happen and the protests can be dropped.
Yeah, we expect it to be dropped, and hopefully no intention of making it to an ABCA hearing. So that is correct.
Okay, thank you. I was interested in hearing from the co-chairs of the committee, sort of where your limit is and how to, where do we gauge whether we're abusing the protest process, as of course we all know has happened in other parts of the city plenty.
Are the applicants on the call?
They are not, but John is fine with moving ahead, so it's amicable, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Trindade DeRomo, I think most of us here who this is, who have a lot of establishments in our SMDs, we are very aware of kind of this process and the costs that occur when it is put on a business owner. So I think, I trust that Commissioner Chauvin is doing what he can to make sure that it doesn't go to a full protest hearing.
And just to know, this will be in contrast to a piece of business in new business. So it's a different story there. So let's be sure to have that conversation.
Okay. Commissioner Chauvin,
so yes, I just wanted to add to the motion the full appropriateness standard, which is peace, order, quiet, parking, litter, and noise provisions. All right, that's the complete single appropriateness standard that we should include in the motion, because that's what the law prescribes. That's what the code prescribes.
Are those actual issues that have arisen from this establishment?
No, but it's the full provision. And I just,
we can't, then we're also on record right now that's if it's not
well, actually, the noise provisions are, so let's ensure we keep the noise
quiet
provisions.
peace, order, and quiet. That does encompass noise.
No, it doesn't. The noise provisions cover the noise provisions, and that's why it's part of the appropriateness standard. So we should include and noise provisions, because it gets complicated. So we should include the noise provisions.
Then what does peace, order, and quiet mean to you, or specifically peace and quiet mean to you?
Noise provisions are noise provisions. It's part of the code. All right. There are explicit provisions in the alcohol code regarding noise, and there's specific extra regulations regarding noise generally in the district that outside the alcohol code. It refers to both of those.
That didn't answer my question on quiet, but okay. Commissioner Jones.
I've got a question, a potential follow-up question. Would Committee Chair Fields please remind me, what are the proposed new hours of operation? Is this later in the night or earlier in the morning that they're talking about?
Yeah, so it'll be earlier in the morning. I don't have the placard exactly in front of me, but I believe it would start at about 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. just because the soccer matches over the summer into later months like July are gonna start at around 11, but they said they need to open up at like 8 a.m. to make sure that they're ready to house customers that are coming in. So it'll be earlier. And then they also are extending their ability for entertainment on their patio, which is outside, but I mean it's not going to extend too late past their hours of operation. It just extends what their entertainment endorsement hours are, which is already within their hours of operation, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Inside
thank you.
their
Sorry, and just one more question on that. Is this particular days of the week that they're looking for this earlier opening time? Or is it just like a blanket, like any given day of the week?
I believe certain days have like a 7 a.m. or 8 a.m., but it will go across Monday through Sunday, yes.
So I have the placard open right here now. It says the proposed hours Sunday through Thursday, 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. And then Friday and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 3 a.m. And then for live entertainment, it'll be from Sunday through Thursday, 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. And then Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. to 3 a.m. Right now, their current hours are 10 a.m. For Sunday, Monday through Thursday, or no, for Sunday, and then Monday through Thursday, 11 a.m., then Friday and Saturday, 11 a.m. So they are seeking earlier hours. Yeah, they're only seeking earlier hours.
Great. And then my sort of final follow-up question is, I wasn't aware of bars like Whitlow's or Whitlow's itself contributing to parking challenges in the morning. And I would hesitate to vote in favor of a protest based on a parking issue that to my awareness has not been demonstrated. I'm not aware of like Whitlow's customers showing up at 11 a.m.
I think Commissioner Chauvin is not recommending that anymore because he said it wasn't an issue. So I think he's just recommending the noise in his amendment, the noise regulations.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead and vote on this and then we'll vote quickly on the amendment. Are there any other comments? Did I miss anyone's hand?
Sorry, quick question. Are we voting on what are you proposing to vote on first, the amendment or the main motion?
Main motion, and then we're going to vote on the amendment.
Could
No, we need to vote on the amendment first.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion to amend the
Well, actually, it's a friendly amendment. So
actually, no, the friendly amendments do not exist.
They don't?
Oh, I know. That was a recent thing. So do we have a motion to amend the protest to include the noise regulations?
I motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Hold on.
Okay, discussion.
I just wanted to be certain that this area is in the middle of the alcohol moratorium pending area. So just to re-articulate the importance.
We heard
of
you.
this.
However,
Yeah.
that has still not been passed by APCA, so we're not weighing in on that. We've already weighed in on it, and
No, I'm not asking you to weigh in. I'm iterating the importance of this measure that's before you to my neighborhood.
Thank you. Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, I just also want to reiterate that any conversations in relation to a settlement agreement, I think we need to make clear that ABR committee members need to be present at that, and it needs to sort of be open to all community members, which is something that we discussed at our ABR meetings. I don't think it needs to be a privatized meeting and discussion between you, John, and a few neighbors. We need to include the entire community and ABR committee members.
So I will try to-
I respectfully disagree with the proposal. It's a negotiation that happens, not with a group of people, but between two parties that have standing to be able to talk about specific provisions of an agreement. It doesn't happen in a big group, right?
Which would also include
So
I've undertaken.
Okay, I'm gonna stop everyone here for a second. Now, the larger settlement agreement discussions can absolutely open up to the community. I will advise that it makes more sense for the parties in standing who are protesting to discuss the settlement agreements, which Commissioner Chauvin is the ANC who represents the area. So that is why we oftentimes trust the ANC in the area to negotiate the settlement agreement. Those settlement agreements then come back in front of the ANC to be voted on if we can in that time. So that's when we see that. Now, there are limitations to negotiating the settlement agreement because sometimes the settlement agreements are negotiated during mediation. Mediation is confidential and only takes place with the establishment, the ANC, a group of 5, abutting neighbors, and any other party who has status to protest. So that is why there are certain limitations. I see what you're saying, Commissioner Fields. This, though, I see both sides of this, and this is why this is how Commissioner Chauvin is conducting this. But I understand the want to make sure that other community members are also heard for this process, and I'm sure Commissioner Chauvin will take that into account.
Okay, well, as ABR committee chair, I think that during smaller negotiations, the chair should be present. And also just due to discussions that we had prior on our last 3 ABR calls where John was present, we had agreed publicly for him to host a community-wide meeting prior to this discussion about a settlement agreement, which he had agreed to do, which Frank had agreed to do. That can happen separately or outside of whatever other meeting needs to occur, but that is what we agreed to in terms of making sure that we're having a settlement agreement that is agreeable to all parties in the area. So, I mean,
I'm just saying, this is not how we conduct business. I've been serving on this committee for 5 years. All right. Never has a group convened to revise and establish a settlement agreement. Chair Harris, you have been privy to how many settlement agreements? How many groups have you held to do this? I mean, you represent your people. I am here representing my people here. And
I know.
You're representing a specific perspective, and I don't think that it's fair that you're using past other situations to discuss this situation, which we specifically agreed upon with the party, John, who is the owner of the Whitlow's establishment, who said that he would host a community-wide meeting to discuss what residents and neighbors want. Now, if you want to have another private meeting where you're meeting with John and just a few neighbors and people who aren't on the ABR committee for whatever reasons, I wouldn't know why, then that's fine. But if we've agreed publicly to host a community-wide convening so that neighbors can weigh in, then that needs to happen. Otherwise, I don't see why we would.
Yeah. Okay, I hear you, Commissioner Fields. Let's take this offline to figure out when there can be a community meeting. And then we can also figure out next steps of, okay, if Commissioner Chauvin has what he needs based off of that community meeting of feedback, then he can move forward and negotiate with the things with John, the owner.
Why would Frank be the only one negotiating with John?
This is his SMD, and
is he protesting as an individual SMD
doesn't matter. We
representative?
also, in all of our certifications, we also defer to the commissioner whose SMD it is. So that is in our certifications. That is also condoned by ABCA. This is how we have run things, and I get it. There is a lot of people on the call saying we, should change things, but this is also in DC code, I believe, too, and I can find it. But so he represents the area. He is the commissioner for 1B02.
Yeah, I'm getting it pulled up now because I just.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think there should be a community meeting. This is a large establishment, but I think also to make sure that things are done efficiently and there is the more distinct representation because Commissioner Chauvin does represent the area. he does have a say. He lives nearby. He understands some of the unique challenges his neighbors are having.
The
So
language that we have on the transmittal says that the ANC may designate any member or every member of its commission to participate in the protest process, which would not only limit it to Frank. So if we're protesting as a full ANC, then anyone should have a right who's a part of the ANC to be a part of that negotiation process. It doesn't need to just be close to Frank. And I feel like
I didn't say it was close to Frank. However, I am saying, and we do have it in other transmittals that we have, that we designate the SMD representative.
We can.
So I know
right.
there have been issues with the transmittals with ABCA recently, but we have designated in the past. Talk about this. And even in the recent past.
Right. But in this
Disagree.
specific situation, I'm not
disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think there can be a community meeting. I also think Commissioner Chauvin was elected as the representative. This is in his SMD. I also trust that Commissioner Chauvin knows what he's doing because he has been a committee member of this committee for over 5 years.
He knows what he's doing. Yes, I agree with that. In regards of other contexts, I'm not going to get into that, but I think it's important that we make sure we're designating the appropriate parties to represent everyone who's involved and everyone who's affected. So I guess I agree with
there's also the ability, if there's any other neighbors who would like to protest, there can be a group of 5. There are other people that can protest. I'm not disagreeing with you. We need to move forward. So the motion at hand right now is the amendment for the noise regulations. All those in favor?
Sorry, can I have a point of information? The noise regulations
to add on to the protest of peace, order, and quiet. So it's to add on to the original motion that we still haven't voted on.
On behalf of the full ANC, are we going to designate that to the motion as well?
No, because it's already, there's no need to designate anyone here. It's already,
what? When are we going to clarify who's going to be representing?
We don't need to clarify that. It's not a clarification. Commissioner Jones.
Commissioner Fields, we can also choose to designate specific people to handle this matter, but we would need to do that in a separate amendment to the main motion. We need to get through this amendment first, get back to the main motion, and then we can make further amendments to say precisely who we are designating. It sounds like per our standard operating procedures, if no one is designated, then it would be the member from the single member district where the establishment is located. But we can also choose to override that with a motion if we choose to do so. So I would encourage us, if we have discussion that is not related specifically to the amendment about the noise provision, let's get that amendment voted on first, and then let's continue discussion on any further amendments as needed. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next motion. Commissioner Jones.
Madam Chair, I move that we amend the main motion to add that ANC 1B designates the commissioner who serves as the chair of the ABR committee and the commissioner from 1B02 as having the authority to speak on behalf of ANC 1B in this matter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion. So I'm going to say that I'm not in favor of this amendment because the reason why we have it open is because if for some reason both Commissioner Fields and Commissioner Chauvin can't make it, then it would limit us in protesting.
Great point, Chair.
Right. So as it stands with the motion that we just approved, it would be anyone from the ANC, correct?
It would be anyone from the ANC.
Right. That's
Sorry,
what I'm in favor of as well,
Sorry.
too.
Point of order. I need to clarify, Chair, if you would, because the SOPs say that the Commissioner of Jurisdiction shall be the lead negotiator on every settlement agreement submitted. So
yes, that's what we've been doing.
Right. So it's not anyone. By default, it's the commission.
It's default, but I'm saying if we narrow it down for this specific protest, if it is just Commissioner Chauvin and Commissioner Fields, then what if they can't make something? Then we have no one, and then we we give up, but we don't fulfill our responsibility. So that's what I'm saying is no amendment is needed.
I move to amend then. Can we say that the commissioner of jurisdiction and the ABR committee chair shall be the lead negotiators
No.
for this matter?
Well, you can amend it. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Wait, point of information. Can you guys just cite where you guys are at in the SOPs so that we can, yeah.
It's 2.5.
I am a little confused as to why, though, this is an issue. Why is this an issue?
Because I don't think, for me, I can only speak for myself. I think that when we go into negotiations and we're limiting ourselves to one perspective from someone who's been adamant about the alcohol moratorium, without respect to the fact that this has been a good owner, a great establishment in the area, who's attended multiple meetings and who's been adamant about being a good neighbor to their community, I think it limits the scope of things that will be discussed and that could be approved and agreed upon.
So I hear you, Commissioner Fields, but as someone who, this is my second term, this is also, I've dealt with many, many liquor licenses already. You are also in your full capacity to attend these meetings. You can attend all of the hearings, you can attend all of the mediations, you can do all of those things. You are not limited to that. So a prior chair has attended those meetings alongside of me to also just help with negotiations. It's nice to have another person on the ANC there. None of our standard operating procedures limit that. Now, I would encourage Commissioner Chauvin to include you on the conversations. And if that becomes an issue, then that's something we should address. But if it's not an issue right now, then do we need to address it?
Well, I'm just going back to what Frank said, which was that he would like to have meetings with himself and the neighbors that he invites with the establishment owner without the ABR committee members, which is why my concern was raised.
Commissioner Chauvin, will you please involve Commissioner Fields?
Sure, I will set meetings, and if she can attend, negotiate, I'm happy to have her attendance. It sounds more like a learning curve for me here, for the commissioner, the chair here, and that's fine. I'm happy. I've always been happy to help out the chair, learning some of the ins and outs. That's fine. It's just that this is all new, and it's not how we've done things for 5 years, and it's tough work. And anyone who knows how in negotiations, anybody who's served in negotiations, and I welcome every committee member here, excuse me, every commissioner who doesn't have any bars. I welcome Commissioner Jones to attend also, because this is tough work and it's tedious work. And it's the most unrespected and unfulfilling work because we have deep problems with ABCA. And I have been the only one on this commission that has been in front of ABCA asking for a better run organization for 3 years, every year during oversight hearings. And I ask everybody here to come and commit as much as I have to in order to live in my neighborhood. So I'm sorry to go off on that, but happy to teach Chair Fields, and happy to invite her to meetings that I will be organizing to get this done. Thank you.
Okay. And I hear you, Commissioner Chauvin. I know that you have been there and you have been a strong advocate over ABCA's overall policies, not just with 9th Street. So I hear you. And I do not want to over engineer something that doesn't need to be engineered. If we can just open it up and you can invite the commissioners who want to learn. I know Commissioner Kinsick has been on calls with Commissioner Handerhan on wanting to learn for Flash. So I think that is a possibility. Commissioner Jones.
Madam Chair, I rescind my motion to amend the main motion.
Thank you. Okay.
I move to amend the main motion.
What are you moving?
To designate Commissioners Chauvin and Fields as co-lead negotiators on this matter.
Commissioner Jones just had that amendment and he rescinded it.
Madam Chair, you correctly pointed out that the way I phrased the motion exclusively designated the right to represent that to Commissioners Chauvin and Fields when that was not the intention. That's why I rescinded my motion.
Is there a second on this amendment?
Second.
Please say second.
Second.
Okay. Discussion. Again, I don't see the need for this. I will not be voting in favor of this amendment. I do not see the need for this. We already have it set. Commissioner Chauvin has agreed to add in Commissioner Fields. This is over-engineering something that is not an issue. And when we get to the prime renewal season, which we haven't even hit yet, we are going to have a lot more licenses in front of us. We cannot do this for each and every one. Commissioner Kinsick.
I'm sorry, I wasn't seconding. I was just raising a point of order. I think it's time we move on. Chair, you're well in your rights on what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying. I think all parties have all figured everything out, that we should kind of move on with this meeting.
Do we have, okay, all those in favor of this amendment? Opposed? Abstentions? Amendment passes. Y'all, we are getting to the,
Sorry, point of personal privilege. Just for the minutes later, it's easier if you announce the vote totals because we can't see all the hands.
You haven't asked for that all night. There have been 1, 2, 3, 4 yeas, 2 nays, 1 abstention. I also need you can count as secretary.
Can we do a roll call on that, please, just so I know?
No, we are not doing a roll call. We've already voted. I'm happy. There are less people on the screen. Commissioner Fields voted yay. Commissioner Lakatos voted yay. Commissioner Jones voted yay. Commissioner Trindade Duramo voted yay. I voted nay. Commissioner Chauvin voted nay. You abstained.
I actually voted nay as well, so I'm sorry. That's sorry.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So it's 3 nays, 4 yeas, 0 abstentions. Okay, we still have the motion on the table. The original motion for protesting. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Sorry, for the record, can we repeat the motion? It includes the provision on noise. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
It was the ANC supported a protest for Whitlow's on the grounds of peace, order, and quiet and noise regulations, and appointing Commissioner Fields and you, Commissioner Chauvin, as the lead negotiators for the settlement agreement and the protest process. Which I will just reiterate, there is no need for that in the future. Moving on, Commissioner Fields.
Yeah, so we have Joe Kaplan's, which was also up for a liquor license renewal, but pretty much there was some confliction, I guess, with the information, so I wasn't able to raise it at our last meeting. So Frank, I was wondering, were you able to protest in your individual capacity as the SMD?
He cannot protest in his individual capacity.
Yeah, I'm not certain again, and I asked for 2 minutes here. This is my deep concern regarding ABCA and ABCA administration, at ABR committee administration. All right, this commission, nobody in particular, but everybody sitting here tonight, has dropped 4 important protests that were approved by this commission, and they got dropped. Okay,
This
I
was
have to
not
be
approved by
forgiving.
our commission, Frank, and we discussed
Hold
this
on,
at our last
Can I
ABR
finish,
meeting.
please?
All right, please let
I'm about to get upset.
I am upset that 4 have been dropped. And again, this is not you, Commissioner Fields. This was the commission, and because it's such an intricate process with lots of details and moving parts and hearings, that it got 4 items were dropped that were approved by this commission for protest because a commissioner or some commissioners didn't show up. All right. I've already had this conversation with several of you. We all know that. I'm asking that we affirm a process that works better and for everybody here. And if that includes some hired help or administration for this process, I would appreciate it. And some legal assistance on some of these matters that are outstanding. And I know Chair Harris and I have chatted about this. So I had asked for any help you might the folks on this call might offer to ensure we don't have this problem again. Specifically, one of actually it's 3 protests. I apologize for exaggerating. But one has to do with the 1900 block of 9th Street, and nobody here is on the calls regarding the T Street Task Force and the 4-decade problems we have of crime, drug use, shootings, stabbings, and this very tough existence in the neighborhood around because of the problems at 7th and T that are exacerbated by alcohol licenses in the 1900 block of T Street. We didn't make it to the Shaw Howard Deli protest, which this commission approved. Do you know what? You're not just affecting my neighborhood and my back, my shoulder neighborhoods.
You are out of time. You are out of time. We have talked about this. Like you have mentioned, you've talked about this with many commissioners on this already. We've also talked about this as a commission. We were in a transition period with Shaw Howard Deli. We realized the issue with that. Now, we have talked about potentially getting admin support. I will say, have all the commissioners on here, have you all attended APCA training? No. Okay, well, I would advise, and I'm happy to reach out to Sarah Fashbaugh or anyone else in APCA to go to this training. It is like Commissioner Chauvin has stated, there is a clear process. It is very clear. And you all do need to, if you want to weigh in, or if you want to support, again, when we get to prime renewal season, Commissioner Chauvin will have many establishments that come out at once. So I would recommend attending this training, and I'm happy to figure out when the dates are, but if you haven't attended, you please attend. I'm also happy to write up the process and to see if former commissioners can also help with that. But Commissioner Chauvin, I hear you. We can't go back and try to do.
Thank you. Thank you for your.
We have tried to figure it out with our attorney, and we are still trying to figure that out. But you cannot protest in your individual capacity for Joe Kaplan. That's not how this protest process works. Commissioner Fields.
Yes, I do want to clarify some things, and I have attended APCA training. Just specifically on this matter, Joe Kaplan's was not brought up at our original meeting in May. Due to that, at the APCA committee meeting on February 22nd, I asked Frank if he could protest either as a group of 5 or 3 or more if the establishment is located in the moratorium zone, as it says on the APCA website. We understand that this was not done, which is why we won't be protesting Joe Kaplan's tonight. I'm very well aware of how APCA is working out. Please forgive me, I've been up for 24 hours straight, so I might not be communicating as clearly as possible. Secondly, on that, Sean Holohan, who was the last chair for ABR, also represented 1B02, which had the moratorium zone pending while he was serving, which I think is why there could be some potential confusion as to what people can do in their individual capacity and what they can do as chair of ABR. So I just wanted to clarify that on this matter. Hopefully moving forward, we don't drop any more balls. Looking forward to receiving more administrative support.
Are there any other questions? Okay, let's move on. Commissioner Fields, when is the next ABR meeting?
The next ABR meeting is not going to be on June 19th. That's Juneteenth. We're going to push it back a week on June 26th. So that'll be at 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Thank you.
And a quick comment on Joe Kaplan. There is a party of 5 that has been established and that has standing, I believe. We'll find out at roll call. Doesn't include me, but I am tangentially supportive. I am wondering, anyway, I'll just leave it at that for now. So there is a party of 5 protest because it sits in the epicenter, 3 doors over from Shaw Howard Deli, which is in the 1900 block of 7th Street, which is an epidemic problemed area. And, this commission is asked for some help in that area. And so whatever you can do, whatever we can do is appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, we need to move on. Administrative, this is where I mentioned that we will be voting on the special meeting on June 27th. We will hold this meeting at, is there any recommendations? Sorry, we can hold it at 7 at our normally scheduled time. But we do need to vote on this so we get it on the calendar. And we can always, if there is the potential, we can always cancel it. We can always push it back, but I think we need to vote on this and get it on the calendar. So is there a motion to set the special meeting for June 27th and whatever time fancies you?
I move that we hold the special meeting on June 27th at 7 p.m.
Second.
Wait. Where are we having this meeting? Sorry.
Zoom.
On Zoom. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Commissioner Jones.
Thanks. I believe that for a special meeting, we need to designate the purpose. So then no other. Sorry.
I know. I knew you were going to say that as soon as I forgot that part. So
for that reason, I move that we amend the main motion. So to make it clear that the purpose of the special meeting is to talk about zoning case 23-02.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes unanimously. We don't need a count. Okay. Original motion with the purpose added. Any discussion? Any other discussion points? All those in favor? Opposed?
I'm sorry. I wanted to see how Commissioner Chauvin was voting.
You voted in favor.
Okay. Favor.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we will be hosting a special meeting on Zoning Commission's case 2302 on June 27th at 6:30. Is that what? 7. Apologies, 7 p.m. And we will have that on the ANC's calendar. We will also send out notice. Okay, Executive Council Member, Commissioner, and Community Announcements. Office of the Council Member. Nicole.
All right. Hello again. So I have quite a few updates, but I will try to keep them short in the interest of time. A couple bills. We've got a bill we just introduced to prohibit utility shutoffs for vulnerable residents during hot and cold months. It prohibits companies from disconnecting electricity and heat from May 15th to September 15th and from November 1st to February 29th for families with children, seniors, people with disabilities, and low-income families. Right now, the current restrictions are all dependent on the temperature outside. And so we have a lot of issues with that, with folks getting their utilities shut off. So that was just introduced. So we're looking forward to hopefully holding a hearing on that. Towing and booting. You might have seen in the news, there's a new DPW pilot, parking enforcement. They've towed nearly 70 vehicles with $600,000 of unpaid tickets, and booted another 700 with $1.5 million in unpaid fines. We helped fund booting and towing positions last year, nearly 40 in parking enforcement. And for next year, we funded license plate readers for DPW tow trucks, which played a significant role in this pilot. We're really working with DPW to really focus on traffic safety as a public safety issue. That includes our fake tags legislation. So we're really excited to see some progress here. In the news this morning, MPD is really cracking down on package theft. They're using decoys to catch some package thieves and send a message to would-be thieves. Our office met with the U.S. Postal Inspector last week to talk about how they are coordinating prevention efforts with MPD. We look forward to continuing to address this with them. Some public safety items in the budget. The police budget is going to see an increase of $70 million. This fully funds the police chief's request for additional officers, more than 200 recruits, 40 cadets, and 20 senior law enforcement officers. We added funds for additional mobile police cameras for 3D, and we contributed funds from our committee to support positions in the crime lab. There's a lot going on with the budget, but just a few quick highlights. We were able to fund the council members' Home Revisiting Reimbursement Amendment Act, which expands access to evidence-based programs for expectant parents. We preserve the office of the Ombudsperson for Children. In our committee, we restored and added positions and funding to improve the timeliness of cases at the Office of Administrative Hearings. We added more open movie captioning to give more access to the deaf, hard of hearing, and late deafened community. We created a new position at the Office of Contracting and Procurement to help give council and the public greater visibility into issues in that office. We extended the standalone public restroom pilot to ensure public restrooms are available to anyone who needs them. Just this morning, we had a ribbon cutting at the Columbia Heights new throne bathroom on the Columbia Heights Plaza. Those are funded through October 2025. Very exciting. We made a change to the Mayor's Office of LGBTQ+ Affairs for more transparency and independence. Happy Pride. We invested $5 million for World Pride next year and doubled the council's contribution to the LGBTQ Center near Howard University and funded the LGBTQ Black History Project. There's still some more work we need to do, especially on housing, vouchers, ERAP, SNAP, pay equity for childhood educators, and we're working on some things on a more equitable tax structure. We really work to drive support for the council's increase in the property tax on properties assessed over 2.5 million, which made it into the chairman's budget proposal. And we're, still working on hopefully seeing a restructuring of the Tax Revision Commission. So our one last thing, our next Brianna on Your Block, which is where she meets with residents one-on-one to talk about anything folks might want to talk with her about, is in ANC 1A. That's on Thursday, June 20th at 6 p.m. at Red Rocks in Columbia Heights. And then next month in July, we will be in 1B. So as soon as we have a date and location for that, I will make sure to share it with folks who want to come out a little closer to home. That's everything extremely fast. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Office of the Mayor. Sorry, I lost my place. I'm not seeing Gerard here unless he's in the audience, and I understand commissioners. I know a couple months ago you had conveyed that you haven't heard from him. I know he was on our last meeting, but I know he dropped off early. But if anyone has any questions for our MOKers, please email them or get in touch with him via phone. I think he does answer his phone and text a little bit more, so I would recommend doing that. And we can put his phone number and email into the chat if that's helpful. Commissioner announcements.
Yeah.
Commissioner Kinzick.
Yeah, thank you. Two things. Just want to make sure that commissioners on the call and hopefully the audience will be joining the Pride Parade this week. Saturday at 2:45, the commissioner area for the OANC designated 1501 Rhode Island Avenue. They'll be handing out shirts. They welcome anybody that wants to join the walk with the commissioners to wear something colorful. The other thing is I'll be speaking with Commissioner Jones tomorrow in regards to looking into working as a chair for the zoning committee moving forward. I know he's currently interim, so we'll have that conversation tomorrow, and I'm sure we'll have some offline discussions, and we'll bring it up next month. That's all I have. Thank you.
I have one announcement. There is going to be a community cleanup held by Legacy DC on Sunday, June 9th at 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Volunteers will be meeting at the intersection of 14th and U. I will be out there, although I'm sure recovering from Pride. But I will be out there, and I hope to see other community members there as well. Happy to send more information, but again, it's at 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. From Legacy DC for community cleanup at 14th and U. Are there any other commissioner announcements? Community announcements. Okay, seeing none, new business. Commissioner Chauvin.
I'd like to introduce a letter drafted to support neighborhood problem resolution. As we know, noise and noise from clubs is a problem around the U Street corridor, around 9th Street, LaDroit Park, now 14th Street. People have their lives upended. You know, people have their can't sleep at night, can't perform at work, lose sleep because they live in their homes, and all of a sudden a new operation comes to town, sits behind them, shakes their home, wakes them up in the middle of the night, and continues to do so. And now this is a deep-seated problem. All right, including the fact that DCRA, that split into DOB, Department of Buildings, and Department of Licensing 2 years ago, decided to disband the noise task force, but didn't tell anybody. And they're working on it. Okay, so we have no resources, not full resources, to deal with deep problems. You probably all know somebody on this call who has problems with noise. So I am initiating, because it's past the time of a settlement agreement, as I described in an email to folks earlier, and sorry it was so late and before this meeting, but we don't have a protest process available for the Thirst nightclub in the 2200 block of 14th Street, because we only can protest legally and have our standing and have hearings in front of APCA when you have a new license, during a renewal, which is every 3 years, and during a period where a licensee would like to have a substantial change, hours, use of a deck, use of a new space attached, inside, outside, roof deck. We don't have any of that here. We have a deep-seated problem with neighbors who are having their lives upended because there's a new club. And unfortunately, Department of Buildings does not have a protocol to work with new clubs to make sure there's proper acoustic mitigation. We don't have any of that. It's left to poor, undeserving neighbors to resolve this issue, and it's unacceptable. It's not just 14th Street.
What are we voting on? What are you
voting on? A letter that it's a collegial letter, a sense of this ANC that we understand the problem, that there's a problem there with noise and a set of residents. And it might be.
It's with Thirst. Can you bring up your letter that you did send to us so then the community can see? Then Commissioner Kinsick, I'll get to you once Commissioner Chauvin brings up the letter.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. However, it took a moment to get to the specifics. And so are you haven't raised this motion yet, but you're suggesting a letter to ABCA about the issues with Thirst Lounge.
No. I am just asking for a sense of this ANC to ask the proprietor, the owner, the establishment to engage in conversations for a settlement agreement that might help the neighbors, because these folks aren't required to meet us in a settlement agreement. There is no settlement agreement.
So why do we need a letter? Why do you need a letter from the ANC?
Because it's the sense of the ANC that this is a problem, and we'd ask the establishment to engage in conversations with the ANC to establish a settlement agreement. They're not required. This is just a sense of the ANC. We'd like them to do such.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go to Commissioner Kinsick. Commissioner Jones, can you stop putting up your hand and put up your hand so then I can do the order? So Commissioner Kinsick, go ahead.
Madam Chair, point of personal privilege. Would Commissioner Chauvin please display the letter in question?
I did just ask him. I think he's pulling it up.
Yeah, and I think that Commissioner or Treasurer Lakatos and yourself, Commissioner Jones, have a pretty good technical computer skills. So Frank, well, he got it up. All right.
I appreciate it, Commissioner Jones, if you could help out with that letter, because I'm actually juggling a few things, if you don't mind. And I sent it to all commissioners this evening.
Commissioner Chauvin, I put it on the screen just for
Thank
clarity.
you.
This is the first page. If you would like anyone to tell me if you want me to scroll to the second page.
So just to give a little context, and I really appreciate Commissioner Chauvin's leadership, guidance on this. This is something that I motioned last ANC call. We voted an approval to do so. You had told
Already
me.
voted? Then we don't need to vote tonight.
Well, I thought you had said to me, Chair, that you wanted to have the executive team and or the body to approve the letter that we're going to send from the 1B letterhead to ABCA in regards to Thirst Lounge.
I don't believe I said that. I think it's suggesting if you needed support on the letter, we could certainly help support. But I think if we already voted on the letter, then we already voted on a letter. However, I think though, here is the difference, is that I think we voted on a letter to ABCA, not to the establishment.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so this is to the establishment. So then we do need to, I guess, vote on this.
And there's some more conversation. The fact that I believe Commissioner Kensick, that you've had failed attempts at trying to negotiate. You've been very involved since November. And also Commissioner Sycamore confirmed in writing that there's been lots of attempts to work via an ANC rep, but no help by the establishment, no commitment to make change by the establishment.
Yeah, that's correct, Commissioner Chauvin. I've gone in person. We've had I spoke to them about a settlement agreement. They weren't looking to do that. This place has a retractable roof. It was the old Sakamore Japanese restaurant. So as a lot of DC has failed us in terms of giving, ABCA, I should say, giving people just can switch over ownerships. And then you have problems like this where neighbors that are within my single member district are having a hard time. They're even hiring their own attorneys now. I mean, we've worked with Musali. This has been going on quite some time. And I feel particularly bad for a couple of the constituents that are dealing with this on a regular basis.
There another question, Commissioner Lakatos.
I would like to make a motion.
Can you take this off the screen?
Yes.
Does everyone read that? Okay, thank you.
I would like to move that the full ANC adopt the letter to S&B Enterprises LLC doing business as Thirst Lounge regarding a request to engage on alcohol licensed operations as was just presented.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Trindade Duramo.
Probably pedantic, sorry, but is it even proper to ask for a settlement agreement when there's nothing to settle, just like as a legal matter?
It's not, you can always ask for a settlement agreement. It doesn't have to, you don't have to have a protest or anything. You can enter in a settlement agreement at any point.
Yeah, I mean, the point I made at the beginning, Commissioner Trinidad Duramo, is that they aren't required to come to the table, but we're asking them as this body to do such to help improve relations in the community.
I understand that. I'm just saying this is an informal settlement agreement, like this is not legally enforceable.
It's still legally enforceable. You still can submit it to ABCA and it will still be legally binding.
Okay.
So settlement agreements do not have to, they can occur at any time. You can have a settlement agreement at any point. It's, it's a community agreement. And if there is a protest that comes up and the settlement agreement passes and it goes through by the ANC, then that supersedes that protest. So there are things in there, but at this point, even though they are not seeking a substantial change, This just though is, they can also agree not to have a settlement agreement. They can come and say, we don't want a settlement agreement, and we have no enforcement mechanism to bring them to the table like we do with a potential protest. But this is just a, hey, y'all are in the community, we're the community, we want to solve these issues before they get too out of hand, so we're going to have a settlement agreement, maybe. Are there any other questions? Comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stovin.
Okay, are there any other comments? Any other new business items? Okay. Any other statements, anything? Hearing none, I adjourn this meeting at exactly 10 p.m. See you all on June 27th to discuss case number 2302 from the Zoning Commission. And if not, then I will see you on July 11th at our monthly commission meeting. Thank you. Happy Pride.
See you. Happy Pride.